The yellow jersey of Simon Gerrans at the front did a superb job, personally speaking, yesterday. There was talk of perhaps a little skirmish between himself and Daryl Impey. Impey, had he finished 9 places ahead of Simon Gerrans, would, on positional countback because of the opening neutralised stage time-wise, he'd have become the leader. So Gerrans presumably tracked him just a little bit. Yesterday belonged to Mark Cavendish, and if he can do it again today, and it's his kind of day, let's not forget, then you never know, it may well be a nice round 25 coming up. Nasser Bouhanni spoke at the top of the day today about how he's just not been feeling on the best of forms. He's got a gastro problem and it's sort of laid him low emotionally, I think, apart from anything else. And yesterday he was complaining about everything. It can spill out and be nastier in other regions of the body, not just your tummy. And he was saying he's got backache, and if you know that if you ever do have the runs, then you'll know that backache comes in with that. So when they sort of say stomach problems, it can mean a whole host of different things, but it usually masks somebody with a dose of something nasty. 139.7 kilometres to go. And, well, when you see a flag horizontal on its mast without any kind of assistance other than the wind, you know it is strong. We're hearing that the gust today will be upwards of 35 kilometres an hour. And with the omnipresent direction changes of the course today as it loops up and down, left and right, like a piece of spaghetti dropped upon the floor, then yes, there will be attack points where the stronger teams can actually make an impact should they wish. Hasn't happened yet with the lone rider up the road. His gap, 2 minutes and 46. It was heading towards 4 minutes, incidentally, but I think he's plumb tuckered out. And the 29-year-old Luis Angel Mate, I think, is about to be caught. No great action, but the pace is very high, and one suspects that this is going to be a bit of a game of chess and strategy as we go deeper into the day. We do have an intermediate sprint that's coming up reasonably soon, and so as Mark Cavendish has now got the bit between his teeth, it may well be that he eagerly contests this. Yesterday he was saving his firepower until the end, and what a performance it was. Absolute genius at work. So we'll see how feisty contested this intermediate sprint is. The points, incidentally, are starting to narrow for the green jersey battle. Peter Sagan saying, you know, when Mark Cavendish is on form, there's nothing anyone could do. And Cav yesterday moving into second place ahead of Alexander Kristoff, who's level with him on 76 points. Sagan is on 111 in that battle for the green jersey. So under the plane trees, offering up a little bit of shade, and quite frankly, both Sean Kenny and I are very, very pleased to be in a shaded commentary position with all blinds down at the moment and a little dose of aircon. Very sticky day it is out there, despite the wind, which will freshen them up on occasion. And you see how it reveals itself in the open ground, and then when you get protected like this, well, it's very, very still. So as you come out into the open, you can suddenly find yourself having to deal with one heck of a windy obstacle. It's just about the only obstacle today. Big smile there from Mate. Well, he's doing it for Cofidis, who've not been seen that much up front. Well, he's here now and doing a job. He's having a little nod because he knows that his DS is talking to him. I'm probably watching these pictures. Incidentally, if you want to keep in touch with live pictures, you can sign up for the Eurosport player and actually watch the action wherever you happen to be, provided you have a 3G or better connection. So yes, if you've got the internet, you can keep in touch with us live. 138 kilometres to go. The gap down to 2 minutes. I wonder what it'll be when we come back from this break. Probably an awful lot less. We'll see you in a moment. Welcome back. We're sailing around what looks like a Norman keep. They did get everywhere after all. They were quite light on fancy design, sort of square. And yeah, you see them on hilly outcrops as they tried to defend old Billy's best interests. There we are. Reminds me a bit of Peveril Castle in Derbyshire. Yes, except of course the weather's an awful lot better. Welcome. We are on this glorious day heading towards Montpellier. It's 176.5 kilometres, and well, the problems continue for Nasser Bouhanni. He's got gastro issues, and he's gone back for some tea and sympathy, I think, and being able to hold on to a medical car, which you can do for as long as you like until the doctor tells you to get off. Let's dwell on the medics, shall we? Jurgen van der Broek is out. Knee injury sustained yesterday. Didn't look that bad, but they drained off his knee 85 cc's of fluid, and today it locked up. He was cycling absolutely nowhere, so he's gone. And Maxime Bouet got himself a broken wrist in yesterday's big crash at the very end. We're hoping today stays safe, but every single day has had its incident, Sean, and yesterday was very costly, particularly for Lotto Belissol's leader.
Yes, well, that's the first big favour to go to the Tour. It's nothing new in the Tour of France. We've seen it, many times in the past years. But I asked myself the question, why is Van den Broek up there in the front? He should stay off a bit out of the sprint, not, be up so far. It's difficult to make the calculation because they want to stay close, not to lose time. But when you get into the final bit there, you should, try and keep a bit off. And it's amazing the general classification men, they're still up there, pushing on and taking a lot of risk. And Van den Broek is the victim of that, and he's out of the race, which is for the team, the general classification. He is their man, he's their only man really. And but the crash yesterday, as we said and as we forecasted during our commentary yesterday, a very good run in, but that doesn't give any guarantee there's not going to be a crash. And the way it happened yesterday as well, we had Trentin, who was leading into the final corner ahead of Steegmans and Mark Cavendish, and he pulled off just after coming out of the corner 50 metres and knocked off his sprint, and it was Bouhanni who just ploughed into the back of him, and that caused the crash. And that is very dangerous in sprinting, because the guys who are leading the sprint, giving it their everything, and then when they pull over, they just come to a standstill almost.
Navarro, who's going to go running the mountains, just taking a bike change here. Not quite sure what the issues was. Often, if it is a full bike change, it's usually gears or something that can't be attended to immediately. So swift change for him. Some more of these glorious rocky outcrops that you get in this part of the world. It's been a long time since they've had earthquakes in this zone, but you never know. You do get the odd rumble as the plates continue to ply their trade. It's going to be a workmanlike and almost tectonic, I imagine, if they do shift later on. Day today for the peloton. Yes, it's going to be explosive at the very end, we assume, provided, Sean, that the wind doesn't get involved, and it's very much a factor today.
Well, the forecaster is giving, wind gusts of, I think, plus 50 km/h, depending on, what section of the route the riders are on. What way it's blowing, of course, and if it's a side wind, and looking at the route today, it turns a lot. It's not like down a straight road for a long time. It's turning all the time, so it looks like they're going to get wind at some time. And if you look at the past here, it's always a nervous place, because the Mistral, when you mention that to the riders on the morning of the stage, well, then they're going to be a lot of nervous riders, and especially the ones who do not like the conditions we're possibly getting today. And that means the climbers, the lightweight riders, the big, strong sprinters, the powerful riders, they can get through that quite well. And, if you look back, we came here in 2009, it was the La Grande Motte, which is not that far away. And that day there was a section where they turned into a side wind, and it was HTC actually put all their men on the front, and 27 riders only got to the finish, and Mark Cavendish won the stage. So it's going to be nervous, certainly, and if the conditions present itself right, well, then I think we will see a lot of echelons and riders having difficulty. And depending on how long they get the side wind for, if they get it 50, 60 kilometres in the finish and it continues all the way, they could guys lose many meets.
One guy's built a packet and then lost it. Here he is. Mate, just about to be caught after a brave little effort where he decided to try and tempt somebody else out of the pack, but it's just too early for most people's liking. And the pace has been moderately high today. Mike's just informed us that 38.9 for the first hour. Doesn't sound too swift, does it? But believe me, they're much higher than that right now. And most of the work at the front, as you can see, being done by Orica Greenedge. And why not? They were on for a hat-trick yesterday. Didn't quite happen because Mark Cavendish out-sprinted Absolutely everyone. Eddie Bosenhagen, former teammate, latched onto his back wheel and was guided home into second place. Sagan saying that Bosenhagen was lucky. So they will break it down themselves as to why they failed. And Sagan saying nobody can beat Mark Cavendish when he's on form such as that. He's on great form. He's in a great mood. Andre Greipel in fourth place yesterday ahead of Mark's old nemesis Ferrari. And Christoph, who is showing himself quite lively, to be honest. He's there or thereabouts on a number of occasions, having to do it on his own for the red jerseys of Katusha. But Orica Green Edge, yes, well, if work rate was required, they weren't shy of that yesterday. And we mentioned at the top of the show, if you're only just joining us, that if they had been separated by more than 9 places, then Daryl Impey, had he finished ahead of Simon Gerrans, would have got into yellow. As it was, Gerrans, I think, tracked Impey. Impey finished 13th. Gerrans finished 15th behind Danny Van Poppel. So he holds on to the yellow jersey, and it means that Orica are riding for it again. It's not the ideal situation, Sean, if you are having to put in so much effort. For the likes of Matt Goss and Brett Lancaster later on, if it is going to come down to a sprint, you've spent your day protecting yellow.
Yes, and when you look at the stage yesterday, they were a long ways down. Matty Goss lost out on that final climb, I reckon it was. But the crash, of course, caused a lot of problems as well, which we see some riders getting left behind. And Kit was another one who wasn't involved in the final sprint yesterday because he got held up with that crash. The interesting thing in the final yesterday, in that 15 kilometres, 20 kilometres to go, the breakaway it had around 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes, and at that point I was surprised to see Orica Green Edge pushing on all the time, because then their yellow jersey was secure, and you could have left the other riders of the sprinters team to control it, but no, they were pushing on really to the end, and I don't think that is the tactic you have to do when they controlled it so well yesterday, because Orica Green Edge, they were the ones who controlled all day, and then as we got closer to the finish, we see some from Lotto Belisol and Argos, they got involved, but they are, from my liking, they did a little bit too much in the final yesterday. And here again today, you're riding on the front. It's a different situation here. Everybody's nervous, so you want to keep control of the peloton. As we can see here, there's a few riders going through at the moment, and I think there's a lot of nervousness in the bunch today because of the possibility of getting the windy conditions.
There is the polka dot jersey of Pierre Rolland and Europcar. He took a tumble yesterday. I think it's his second, indeed, fall of this year's race. He's coming to the fore because there is one categorised climb today. Only 1 point, because it is towards that polka dot jersey, I might add, because it's categorised 4. It comes just after the sprint, very close together. The sprint itself will be with us at the 113.5 kilometres to go mark. So what, in around about 18 kilometres time, something like that. And when that happens, it'll get a bit lively, and then Pierre Rolland will be going for that solitary point. But he's basically staying safe, and I wonder whether it was that safety issue, Sean, that made Orica just keep on churning yesterday. If they felt good, best place to be, the safest place to be, was up front, and they stayed relatively safe as a team, maybe as a result.
Yes, I think that is something you have to consider what way the team want to do it. I suppose if the rider who you want to protect prefer the riders to keep the pace in the front, and you just sit back there in 5th or 6th place, you can you have to ride then and just keep them in that comfort zone. And it's all about what position the rider feels he is comfortable, and he will be able to hold his place. So riding on the front, certainly, but you're going to pay for that as the days go on, and we can see him here again today. They are not shy to ride in the front, certainly, and they never have been Orica Green Edge.
Mikey?
Marcel, gestern ein bisschen unglücklich. Team Argos, du hast auch gestürzt. Was passierte pünktlich?
Well, this is Marcel Kittel. Looks like Mike's taking a comfort break. Can you explain what happened? You were held up by the crash? Well, after the last climb, right in front of me there was a crash of 2 riders, and I just couldn't avoid them. Just took a little fall on the left-hand side, but thankfully I don't have any serious injuries, but it knocked me out for the final sprint, so it hampered me there. So today, probably another sprint finish. Is a win on the cards? Oh, we always have a good plan for the final. We usually try and stay calm, and we try and pre-prepare the sprint as much as possible to get me to the front whenever we can, and then we'll see who is first. You know that Mark Cavendish had victory here a couple of years ago, or close by, and do you know the finish? Well, as Mark Cavendish won a couple of years ago in this area, he didn't know the finish at that point either. So yeah, it's sort of an open book as far as Kittel is concerned. Don't forget, he was the man that won on day one and wore that yellow jersey before it was taken from him on day two. On to Bakerlands, in fact. Well, it happens to be with Simon Gerrans after yesterday finishing reasonably high up the order, and that's why Orica Greenedge are doing some work right now. Yesterday as well, you see the blue jerseys on the left-hand side of your screen with the E just going in behind the green of Europe car. Yes, Garmin Sharp had some issues yesterday as well. We actually thought that Christian van der Velde looked very bad indeed. But he was just badly winded, it seems, and despite picking up his bumps and grazes, he's riding, which is good news. Unlike Maxime Bouet of AG2R, who's got a wrist injury, broken wrist, and I've got to tell you that Jürgen van der Broek, if you missed it at the top, is out. Team principal of Lotto Belisol, their #1 rider, unfortunately had 85 cc's of fluid drained off his knee last night, and it just locked up today and he couldn't pedal. So if you can't pedal, you can't race. 127.5 kilometres to go. The safety issue, Sean, has become ever larger. The argument for radios has been that it is safer and you can warn riders, but they're being used for tactics, and when directors sportifs are screaming at their teams to get to the front and get safe, and there's not that much room around and everyone's receiving the same message, you do get that compression and it can be dangerous.
Well, I think, you know, with or without radios, it's always going to be dangerous in the Tour of France in the beginning. When you look back, Tour of France, the history of the Tour of France in the last 15, 20 years, and especially in the last 10 years, they seem to take much more risk. I think a lot more pressure on the riders to perform, to get results, the teams pushing for results, and for that reason, you know, we have crashes, but with the radios, of course, they're being warned when there's a point coming up where it is going to be dangerous, and everybody's giving the same orders, all teams are giving the same, and they all try to be in that place where there's room for 30, 40 riders, but you have 198 riders, as we had at the start of the race, trying to get up there or close to that number. But if you had not got radios, I think, you know, the riders in the briefing in the morning time, they would have this thing on their handlebar, on their extension, which we call it. They would, you know, the points of danger, they would have it written out, and when they be turning different directions as they go through the stage, and the riders themselves, you know, just would start pushing on anyway then. So I don't think to take all the danger out of it. Might not maybe push the riders as much, but certainly I think in the earlier days you cannot do anything to, you know, solve the problem of the nervousness of the riders, and they all feel well and all want to be in the front, and that, you know, provokes crashes.
Certainly does. Safest place to be, and right now that's why the yellow jersey is up there. Orica taking no chances today. Well, the wind's continuing to just gust a little bit, as you can see from the bushes at the side of the road. Hearing orange groves. Thought we'd see some fruit by now, but there you go. 125.9 kilometres remaining. In a moment, we'll take ourselves a short break, but in advance of that, let's remind you that you can have a chat with us on Twitter. You can join the likes of Felix Helmsley, Paul Byrne, Velo Louisville, and the rest of them who've already got on there with their little questions and comments, which is great. If you'd like to join them, then it is at Carlton Kirby. And don't forget, if you hashtag it Eurosport Cycling, yes, I know it shortens your message, but keep it concise. If you do that, then it goes to all the other commentators as well, and your questions may well be asked far and wide. So we'll take that break as we have a hiatus in hostilities just for the moment. We'll be back after this. Welcome back. Just look how active the trees and the grasses are here. It's not just the helicopter. Side wind coming into the right-hand shoulder of the riders. And when they get into open ground, they're feeling the full might of 40 kilometres an hour at this point. Now, a lot of you wondering why it's such a windy place, particularly in the summertime. Well, the flat earth heats up and the rocks around likewise, and they hold a lot of heat overnight. But the air vectors, it goes straight up and is then, the void is kind of filled from elsewhere. It's an easterly today, incidentally, but swinging around and eddying all over the place. Castroviejo goes back for bottles. Incidentally, all rules today, because it's so hot, on feed and drink from the cars are suspended. So there will be no place where you can't take on sustenance. And believe me, you need it on a day like today. A number of you asking about nutrition. We'll be talking about that later on today. But yes, so you can take on as much food and drink as you like from the cars. You don't have to wait for the feed zone, and you can have as much as you like late on as well. I think they usually move the hiatus on bottles to 15 kilometres from the end of the line. Here's Mike with another chat.
Yes,
with, one of the great and the good.
I'm not sure who we're going to hear from, but all will be revealed in a moment. Sammy Dumoulin, the little fella from 82R. Maxime Bouillet. That's unfortunate, isn't it, that he's broken his wrist? You were working for each other. Yes, he says that was very important for me, and that was a bad crash for him. Very unfortunate that he broke his wrist. He did all the work for me towards the end, and all I can say is I wish him good luck and hope that he's recovered and back to form pretty quickly. Now we have to rework the strategy for the final sprints from here on in. Now there you are, Carlton. Maxime Bouillet out, and little Dumoulin has got to find somebody else to help him out in the sprints.
Remaining flexible, Mike, is what it's all about.
Well, yeah,
you have to be able to alter your strategy when you need to.
He's so tiny, he could get in underneath the big boy's shoulders, couldn't he?
Yeah, he's the worst man to be in a break with. He offers no resistance, no wind protection at all. I once saw him and Steegmans in a break, and I felt very sorry for Steegmans. Yes, sitting behind him, wondering how on earth am I going to get any advantage here. 120.8 kilometres remaining. Sean, they have suspended the rules on nutrition and indeed water today, save for the last 15 kilometres. It's normally 30. On such a hot day, I'm not surprised. They're kind of doing these guys a favour.
Yes, well, that is the norm in the Tour when the weather gets really warm. From the start, they have it allowed to go for bottles earlier and into the final as well. And they will definitely need it today because, you know, the temperatures out there are very warm, and it's a difficult one today. As you can see here, you know, this up front of the peloton, it's just not relaxed at all. You can see here there's a lot of movement, a lot of teams staying to the front. We can see Katusha there staying very much up to the front, and that's because Joaquim Rodriguez is concerned, and you can be guaranteed that there's a lot of the other general classification men, you know, who are close to the front there at the moment, and that's going to take a lot of effort to do that, concentration, to keep on moving up, keep your place in the top 20, 30 riders, because you just never know when you turn. There can be a side wind, and if a team just up the pace, well, then we're going to see the echelons, and if you're a long way back in the peloton, you can find yourself in third, fourth echelon, and then it can become very difficult. So to get the bottles today, it's going to be a lot of work as well for the domestiques, because to go back to the cars, make your way up the way the peloton is travelling along, it's going to be an effort as well.
There we are, the voice of Sean Kelly. Got a book out, by the way. He'd be so embarrassed by this, but anyway, it's a fantastic book. It's called Hunger, and thankfully Sean bought the sandwiches today because it's flying off the shelves, which is great. Autobiography of the great man. 119.9 kilometres to go. Oh, hello. Well, that looks slightly sore. You never know when these incidents will come. Quintana as well, we were talking about him as a potential for a top 5. Others thinking that he might go even higher than that overall. Sean Kelly thinks not. It looks like, Sean, your predictions come right. Get off me, he says. I'm helping you up. There we are.
Well,
See the stress.
We had a chat this morning with a journalist Fodringham, and I asked him, what do we think of Quintana for the general classification? Is he possible of making the top 5? And he said, of course, he can make a top 3. And I said, well, a top 3 will be an unbelievable performance, but he has to get to the Pyrenees, of course, not losing too much time. And today is going to be a difficult day for the little lad, because if they start riding in echelons, he is going to be under severe pressure. And if he can finish today, if there's echelons without losing in time, well, then I can see him doing a top 5, but a top 3 in the general classification, I'm not too sure on that, but a lot of people are very much talking him up.
Well, I've got £10 each way that says he's going to to get up there, only because the odds were so big. I think 66 is. I think he's narrowed now, courtesy of Bill following, actually talking about him, and of course my good self. They're one of the meteorological stations. You can see the little wind arrow there. That helicopter is playing havoc with that. They've measured winds up here well in excess of 100 kilometres an hour. It is a very gusty place. It's probably why it's quite Spartan on the peaks of this lovely range, by the way, the Alpilles range, spelled Alpilles. So the Alpilles range. There we are. It's that sort of limestone outcrop. Limestone, yes, formed by small sea creatures over time. You can actually grind limestone down, make mineral lime, and then burn it. Make searchlights and that kind of thing. And also, indeed, theatre lighting of old. Quite dangerous, but very bright. Hence, limelight. There we are. We're going to bow out of the limelight in just a few moments' time and take ourselves a break. Get it all here. 118.1 kilometres remaining today. And who's going to burn out today? Well, there will be some. Let's hope they stay safe. Back in a moment. Welcome back. We are rapidly approaching that intermediate sprint we were talking about earlier on today. And guess what? Omega Pharma Quickstep in their blue, black and white jerseys to the fore. Mark Cavendish will not be that far behind. This is quite often when you get an intermediate sprint, especially with a climb that follows immediately, because they go straight onto the climb, it can carry a lot of pace through it. Quintana's just being attended to medically. And I tell you something, he's going to, it's the wrong time to be getting just a rub of liniment on the knee. Save it for later, my friend, if that's what you need, because they're going to go through the sprint and then they're going to hit the climb straight away, and he's going to have extra work to do. There you go. Still got a couple of kilometres remaining before we get there, so we might just have enough time to speak with Martel Kittel. I'm hoping that we have the sprint in advance of that. But it will haul break loose, and we are hearing that we'll go to our interview a little bit later on. I think it might be Greipel. I'm not quite sure. One of the two chatting to in a moment. So the relay's going back on, and he's looking completely demotivated, Nasser Bouhami, I've got to say. We interviewed him at the top of the show today, Sean, and he just looks plain fed up. I know he's got stomach bug.
Yes, well, yesterday the stomach bug, and he was suffering with that. Then in the sprint, of course, he was the one, I believe, who crashed into the back of Trent in from Omega Pharma Quickstep, who was leading out the sprint. We did see him into the last corner, Trent in, pulled it for another 50-70 metres, then pulled over to his right, and I believe that Bouhami just crashed into the back of him, and that's what caused the big pile up at the finish.
Right, so he's hurting on the inside and hurting on the outside.
Big time.
And hurting in the head. So he's not got much going for him at the moment. Let's hope he recovers. 1.4 kilometres to the Masouan les Alpilles. And here we go. Greipel's boys up there. Now, Andre Greipel is targeted this, of course, and the wind's also already playing a part here, Sean.
Yes, we can see the way Lotto Bellasol is putting it over to our right-hand side, as we can see on the screen. That tells us the wind is coming across, from they're off the left-hand side as we ride in the direction they're riding, let's say, but the wind is coming across from the right. And as you mentioned, after the sprint, if the wind is a little bit on the side, well, we could see somebody else taking it up. And we are turning a bit after the sprint. When we look at our route manual here, it's turning a bit after the sprint, and for Quintana, it's not the place to be on the rear, because if it does go into echelons, he's going to have big problems. So hopefully for him, it will just settle down after the sprint.
To be fair to him, the medical car is quite close at hand, thankfully, because they are bunched together. But it did seem a bit odd that if you're going just for a little bit of antiseptic cream, which is what it looked like, you can have that whenever you want. Use the pain. Yes, 114.2 kilometres to go. Pace is up, but it's not crazy at the moment. Expect it to be so fairly shortly. Terpstra and the rest of the boys here doing a good job of pacing Mark Cavendish into a decent position. He's up for it now, don't forget. Very much so, and looking for his 25th stage win. The points are important as well, and he's got a gap to close on Peter Sagan on 111 points. He himself is on 76. Andrei Greipel is no slouch either, and he is right there and not that far away from Alexander Kristoff in the red of Katusha as well. Peter Sagan is also in the frame, and he's got a lead-out man. Mark Cavendish has got 2 men in front of him, and as you can see, he's being shadowed as well, and that is Greipel just behind the red jersey of Kristoff. Sagan goes for it. Mark Cavendish is playing a wily game here, but it's Greipel on the other side of the road. Greipel versus Cavendish right now. It's got a bit of an uphill drag, this one, and I think this may well be Greipel's on the line. It is not really burning too much today, and that's absolutely the right thing to do as they go through the sprint. Nicely contested, Sean, but not frantic. That's good.
No, not anything frantic, but Greipel, again, we can see it is a little bit uphill there, and both of them, both Greipel and Cavendish, just, you know, suffering the last 25-30 metres, but Greipel just the strongest. Cavendish there, you know, giving it quite an effort. Kristoff finishing second, and Sagan in 4th place.
Well, quality will out, even at moments such as this, and yes, you've got amongst our best fast men on the planet right there, including the best, of course. 113 kilometres to go, so we're climbing, Sean. Category 4, and we'll see how they bounce their way up. I was wondering if there might actually be a response and an escape at that point. We have got Greipel, I understand, who's going to have a chat with us in just a few moments' time. Here's Agriculteur 13, yes, farmers from 2013, and even I can recognise that one, Sean. It says 100, but it's also a bike. Here's Mike.
We're in the rhythm.
That's the kind of the bike I was riding when I first started in this game. It's that long ago. But here is Andrei Greipel, who's just won that hotspot sprint after 63 kilometres. What are your views so far on this Tour de France? Well, it's sad that we've lost one of our main riders. Van den Broek was such a good rider, but we can't think of the past. We've got to look to the future now that Van den Broek has gone. What about today? Well, I'm sure that it's going to be a sprint finish today. We know the finish from a year or two ago, and we think we have a good chance. Are you nervous because you haven't won the stage so far? Well, not really. I have won one or two of the intermediate sprints. Well, of course he has. I think that's the 3rd one that he's won. He's had a couple of seconds as well. He's been very consistent, actually, Carlton, in the intermediate sprints. He's still got to put in the big one at the finish, hasn't he?
He has. He's more than capable, though, and wouldn't be surprised to see if Greipel does the business very, very soon when it comes to the line. We'll see. He's extremely capable. A very likeable chap, actually, by the way. Very likeable indeed. I'm being logged out of my my internet at the moment, which is slightly upsetting. You get a lot of this as well. Troglodytic dwellings. There we are. Cut yourself a house, stick on a wall on the front, and then encourage others to come and join you, and suddenly you find yourself with a hilltop village. Very cool in the summer, and apparently quite warm in the winter if you are able to make the rock face your home. There you are. Don't fancy it myself. It is our climb, however, and I've got to say, for Category 4, it's rather dramatic looking, Sean.
Sorry, I was listening to race radio there.
Good lad. It's better listening elsewhere. I was just saying how dramatic this Category 4 actually looks. They're going to wind their way up here, and I think this is the peak.
Yes, well, I think the Category 4 is not going to cause any major problem finding anybody in the peloton. At this point, you know, they're going to just get up this climb at an easier pace, and they're all just thinking about further on the windy conditions. I think that's the concern today, and they're just hovering around the front and playing the waiting game. But what spectacular countryside we have here. But conditions today, it's going to be very edgy stepping out there with the temperatures being so high, and the race is rolling along at quite a strong pace. Normally, if it was a real calm conditions, I think today we will see a very slow stage in the earlier part with the warm conditions, but because the way the wind is blowing, everything is a little bit nervous out here at the moment. They'll certainly not have a chance to look much at the countryside.
Absolutely not. Beautiful as it is. The whole thing, I think the whole point about the Tour de France as well, or part of the reason, I should say, a major part, is that it is a quite stunning view of what is a very blessed nation in terms of geography. They have a fantastic series of parts to this nation, be it Alpine, the best of the Mediterranean, the best of the Alps, probably the best of the natural woodland as well, although probably the Germans might argue with that. It's spectacular. It's like a whole series of different countries, each with their own beautiful characteristics, melded together in one. You think of all the different coasts that they've got. It is amazing, and we're going to be visiting most of it because this Tour de France is entirely within France, starting off, of course, on the French island of Corsica and then hitting the mainland. So no dipping out into other countries. They're not sharing the glory this year. Who's going to take glory at the top of this climb? Well, King of the Mountains is a little bit more open. The points that have been garnered so far don't include any Alpine peaks because we haven't really hit the heights yet. And so the points have been quite minimal, Sean, and there's a chance to move on if you like. Moving backwards at the moment, though, appears to be Mr. Gouani, unfortunately.
Yes, and I don't think we might see the riders who are up in the general classification at the mountain classroom, because the fourth category, nothing really to gain here, and it's not going to change the overall classification for the King of the Mountains jersey. So there'll be surely somebody who will go for the sprint who was not really in the mountain classification at all.
And that's quite often what you see. King of the Mountains jerseys occasionally don't really get on the backs of climbers if you have a gentle introduction to the high ground, and that's more or less what we've seen. I think the highest category we've had is a 2, which Pierre Roland took, and as a result he is in that leading that classification, the polka dot jersey. A couple of you asking what we think of the merits of the various jerseys. I've got to say I really like the polka dot. Yellow, of course, is just the ultimate in the world of cycling. The green jersey, a bit too close to Cannondale this year. There you go. You can't really see that Sagan is around because he's wearing the green points jersey, and it looks so close to his teammates. It looks like he's just missing a stripe, as it were. There we are. They picked their way up towards this little escarpment, and he continues to suffer really badly, and I just wonder whether he's going to ride through this, Sean.
It's not looking good when you're suffering at this early part, and the way the bunch is going along, they have not raced aggressive at all, and if they do get the conditions, it's still with over 100 kilometres to go. If they get the side winds and it really start to race fast up front, many echelons on the road, and Gouani is going to be in major difficulty. At the moment he's in quite a bit of difficulty here, just hanging on, clinging on in the cavalcade, so I'd not be surprised if we see him abandoned on the stage today.
Well, it would be a shame. It's a huge event. There is none bigger in the world of cycling, and we've seen riders just trying to continue where others would have given up long ago, and perhaps they in other races riding through injuries, notably Geraint Thomas. Incidentally, we are hearing reports that Geraint Thomas's puncture yesterday, remember the one where his mechanic actually went to push him away and pushed him on his pelvis, which, as you know, has a hairline fracture, and he winced, and so did we. Apparently it was a tack, as in a small little nail, which has dogged us previously, Sean. I do hope that that's not the case, because I understand as well that Ian Stannard suffered the same fate. So if we have got a nutter out there, I hope he's done his job, and that's that. It's just crazy.
Yes, well, let's hope he's running out of tax as the race go on. It seems that the supply was quite low yesterday because not many riders punctured compared to last year. Like, there was dozens of riders had punctures in the space of 10-15 kilometres. Most was on that climb, but on the descent there was a lot of riders had to make the change. So yes, but you can get some tax on the road as well. From maybe just building there. It's possible that there's not somebody out there throwing them on the road.
Let's hope not. Dangerous that most certainly would be, and I think it's one of those things that they just wanted to sweep under the carpet last year. I'm not surprised. Not something you really want to dwell on too much in case it encourages nutcases. 108.4 kilometres, and they're on their little downhill section, and there you are, dispatched today's climb. So that was the lump. Now, Sean, it's very, very flat, and the wind, which is animating that flag on top of this former fort, going to be a big factor. Off they will come in temperatures minimum 30 Celsius, and haven't got a recent heat for you at the line here, but we're hearing 34. That's very, very much summertime. We like that. So over the climb they went, the category 4 only today, and Bouhanni's just going backwards. I don't know whether he's going to take any heart from the crowd here. He's been very much part of the French consciousness as yet another hope. Was never one for the GC this year. Oh my goodness. At least he's got his sunblock on.
Yes, well, unlucky again. We did see him in the Giro where he was contesting in the sprints with Mark Cavendish on the first days, and then I think did he get sick? Was there some problem? But he went out very early days. He was out for some reason, and here again, getting sick in the first days, and then the crash yesterday. Really the morale's in his shoes at the moment, and I think it's the problem having the stomach bug. It just takes all your strength, and that's not looking good for Bouhanni at all here. I don't think he's ever going to rejoin the peloton.
No, and his team are alongside, and they're trying to encourage him, and now just slaps the side and get in behind, as they say, and we'll try and ride you on, and presumably take the heat from any fine that they might have. Clearly deliberately pacing him, banging the side of the door and saying, get behind us.
Yes, but I think up in the peloton the pace is still just quite high, not knocking it off at all, as we can see here. Many teams on the front of the general classification men, and here's the answer to it. We can see a line of riders further back in the peloton, and for anybody dropped from the climb as Bouhanni without any power at all in the legs, well, it's going to be difficult to see him getting back into the peloton today.
Well, we're talking about nutrition, and it's very, very difficult to actually keep nutrition or actually use it, no matter what you put into your body, if it's not actually staying in there. Arthur Bichot, who's taken over that French national tricolour jersey, you just saw him and what sort of pace he's having to put down here. The slightest gap, Sean, suddenly you lose the assistance of the drafting effect of the riders in front of you, and suddenly you have to work an awful lot harder. If you actually look deep into the bunch here, you can even see riders who are freewheeling, such as the protection that's being offered up by the riders that are around them. Those who are perhaps part of what might be a split are desperate to get back on. We'll take a break. Welcome back. 103 kilometres to go. It's not going to take that long for them to eat that distance, because today is very pacey, and look how nervous it is. They are battling for road position here. Everyone is totally fearful of getting cut away from this main charging group. The wind has had an influence already. It's ebbed a little. It's as they have changed direction, it's now coming as a cross headwind, meeting the riders on their right-hand shoulder. So as you look at them coming across the screen from the left to right, which is why we've got that suggestion of a line stretching backwards across the road. There we are, 102.3 kilometres to go. There's going to be a lot of talk about this day, Sean, because it might look like an easy day as far as terrain is concerned, but it's going to be punishing.
Yes, it's going to be very energy sapping, and physically and mentally, because you have to concentrate all the time for the full distance of 176.5 kilometres, and the effort it takes out here, the warm conditions as well, to get the fresh drinks all the time. They won't be able to get them as often as they would like to, so I think riders will go maybe a bit without liquids at times, so it is going to be energy draining whatever happens here. If they continue like this, and they will speed it up in the end for the bunch sprint, if that's the case, if it does stay in a bunch. But if we get side winds, well, then we will see real full-on side wind. Well, it will break the peloton very, very quickly.
Certainly could do. I've got a few more interviews for you. Before we go to Mike, let me just tell you, Campbell McEwen says, which British rider has completed the most Grand Tours? Well, Mike has the answer, and we'll give that a little bit later on today after this interview. In fact, a little bit deeper in. Give some of you a chance to make the answer. Mike?
Yes, I have the answer, but I'll not give it away just yet. We'll let that ride just for a little while as we look at Nasser Bouhanni. Poor lad. Meantime, though, we turn our attentions to Sojason and Julian Elfaraz. How are you feeling so far? Well, I'm very close to my home right now, so the family's coming out to see me today. So I'm hoping to put on a bit of a show. It's going to be difficult, I know, but maybe they'll give me a little bit of leeway. I'll need some help from my teammates if I am to get away. But certainly in the next day or two, whilst we're here in the south of France, I will try. I know all the roads here, I know the starts, I know the finishes. I think our captain will dictate things, and he will tell us what we're going to do.
Je pense que c'est possible qu'il y ait une équipe qui nous fasse qui essaie de nous surprendre. Donc il faudra rester vigilant ici et aussi dans les 40 derniers kilomètres où le vent risque de souffler un petit peu plus de travers. Et il y aura un petit peu plus de rafale de vent. Donc vigilant surtout dans la dernière partie au ravitaillement, je pense.
Merci beaucoup.
We'll have to be very focused and see what happens. Well, there we are. We've not seen an awful lot of Sojason off the front, but Brice Fillou, team leader, he's the captain, so no doubt he will be rallying the troops as this stage goes on through territory with which Carlton, they apparently are quite familiar.
Yeah, actually they're not bad in the breaks. They had a man on I think 3 days of the 4 where it was possible today. They've been up there. Lemoine was up on the first day. Who else? Villemos, who has the biggest number out there, number 219. He was on day 2 on the run to Calvi, and yesterday they had Delaplace. So they've been busy. They've done it for the sponsors, Mike, that's for sure, albeit ultimately unsuccessful on all of those occasions. And despite the fact that they've been in all of those breaks, none of them have got the combativity award. Today, that is De Gent. Thomas De Gent, as Bouhanni continues to roll, they've given him a can of Coca-Cola to try and cheer him up. So he's eschewing the regular drinks bottles, and he's had a little tinny. But unfortunately, he's got tin legs today, and it is not great. He's got a tummy upset. Incidentally, cola drinks, and there are many different ones available, were originally created to settle the stomach. Whether they do or not, I'm not sure, but a lot of people certainly believe that. Doesn't want the camera there, doesn't want this to go on much longer at all, and he's angry and upset, and I wouldn't be surprised to see if there are not a few tears if he does step off the bike, but it's not looking great, Sean.
No, not looking good at all. No, he's got the team car back there, but he's lost the tail end of the cavalcade, and that's going to be very difficult. And the commissaires, are going to be watching. They're going to stay back there, that he does not get pacing from the team car. But if he could make it back to the end of the cavalcade, he could get in, and if it continues on riding at this pace, he could just about maybe get through the stage, but where he is positioned at the moment out there behind the peloton, and no protection at all to get him back into the main peloton, it doesn't look like he will ever see the big group of riders again today.
Chavanel, question from Ben Headley. Chavanel was fined yesterday for eating incorrectly. Can you confirm and explain this? He may well have taken on feed in a restricted zone, Sean.
Yes,
too late.
Yes, possibly too late. I see that in the results of yesterday as well, that he got a fine. So when you go past the feeding zone in the final, you cannot take anything, the gels, energy bars or bottles from the team car, and sometimes it's just the riders think of it at the last moment as we come to that point, and then just go back and try and get a number of bottles for the riders who are just controlling up front, and you get the fine. But you have to make the calculation. If you can get a bottle for every rider, get a little bit of food, a couple of gels, a couple of energy bars, and give out the fresh drinks to the riders, and if somebody needed an energy gel, well, it's well worth it at the end of the day, because if you can do like Omega Pharma Quick Step yesterday, go on and win the stage, the couple of Swiss franc fine doesn't matter.
No, exactly. So he took the hit. That rule, incidentally, suspended today because it's so hot, and the energy levels that are going to be required to get through today because of the dreadful wind mean that they've decided to waive that today. So you can go and take your gels and your water, whatever you like. I believe it's down to a cut-off of 15 kilometres from the end, and you can take it from the car. So, yeah, help yourself, knock yourself out, why don't you? 97.5 kilometres to go as they come through these sort of lightly wooded areas. And strangely, on Corsica, we saw eucalyptus trees, no koala bears, you understand, but or was it pandas? Not quite sure now. You feast on those. Yes. Mark Cavendish hopes that he's going to be at the top table today, continuing the culinary allegory. Yes, it would be great to see him get there. I've got to say, 25 stage wins to his name if he does it. And the gap on Eddie Merckx's record of 34 is closing. And in fact, he will draw level with Andre Leduc, incidentally, who last won in 1936 on 25 wins. Next in the firing line, Bernardino on 28. I think every time Mark wins, Bernardino says getting closer. He'll be even closer if he wins today. 34 the ultimate target, though, and he's young enough to get there, Sean.
Yes, he's definitely young enough to get there, and the sprints that he is able to produce when he gets to stages that are suitable at all, he can just pick them off. And when you look back at last year's tour, riding for Team Sky, the team support wasn't around Cavendish because they had the general classification to think of as well, and still winning 4 stages. This year it will be interesting to see how many he can get when we get to Paris at the final of this one, but there should be a number of stages more for Cavendish, and he's still very young, so he's a lot of very good years ahead of him. I don't think he'll be thinking every day about the record of Eno and the record of Merckx. He'll be just thinking about each day, when it's a suitable day for the sprinters, go for the stage victory and just take one day at a time.
I think so. In fact, taking one day at a time is the philosophy. Oh, hello, this doesn't look great. This is at the back of the course, and that looks like a bit of a broom wagon. And I don't see Buan. Ah, there he is. I thought for a moment maybe the bike was in there so as not to get confused with any of the others, and that he'd taken to the car, but he's still on the road, albeit a very lonely one. Well, I suspect we'll be seeing rather a lot of Mr. Buani as we go through the day, particularly if he carries on and suffering. Away we head. Polytunnel's just edging out of your screen. Yes, a lot of salads down here. I was in Nice, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to have a salad niçoise. And it was the most disappointing salad I've ever had in my life. It was like a bag of leaves with a little bit of tinned tuna fish. They hadn't even bothered to put the anchovies on, and it was rubbish. There you go. So all this about eating what is famous for the area. Bag that. Should have had the steak that Kelly went for. He's looking better for it. Here's Mike.
You're a hard man to please sometimes, Carlton. I've had a niçoise and it was lovely. Anyway, Nasser Bouhanni, the poor guy, he's in desperate trouble. And you know, the tour with all its drama has a need to provide emergency responses at any time. Today, the tour's endowed with a leading-edge medical department composed of a dozen doctors, surgeons and anaesthetists, cars, motorbikes in the middle of the peloton, and vehicles spread out at all race levels, including an equivalent of emergency and intensive care ambulances. It's like a miniature travelling hospital, and sadly, it's all too often needed. But you know, as unbelievable it might seem, the tour riders of the old days rarely came across a doctor in the race. They had to look after themselves in those days, relying only on the competence of the odd passing masseur who just might happen to be around. It was only after the tour's relaunch, after the Second World War, in fact, that the first nurses were introduced, and by 1948, 3 Red Cross nurses were a part of the race, not riding, you understand, before the first senior physician appeared in the 1950s. The medical department gradually got better with time, and then in 1959, as we're going to hear in a moment, and I'll translate for you this little extract, the health service was equipped with more modern means. 6 fast cars, 2 doctors, 5 Red Cross nurses called up for the entire tour to intervene at any time. And the great novelty, the presence of an evacuation helicopter for the entire race. Well, there you are. It has developed, of course, as indeed many aspects of this race have developed over the years. But there's something that sadly we do need, of course, from time to time. Well, most days so far this tour. Let's hope we don't need them too often, although I see, Carlton, that they are keeping a very close eye on Nasser Bouhanni, the poor lad.
Absolutely, he's a French favourite, of course, champion standard as he was and remains, but yeah, unfortunately, he's not in a good shape. I think if he was possibly any other nation, it wouldn't matter quite so much, but this is the Tour de France. We're at the behest of the host broadcasters, and he's a big favourite amongst the fans, Nasser Bouhanni, particularly on a quick day such as today. I think he would have hoped to have been part of it. Yesterday got tangled up, as you know, and as a result added to his stomach trouble. And we're hearing there's a fall at the back of the peloton, and I presume that these guys are relaying back on as a result. That's Belkadri, who's been involved in a number of spills, incidentally. He was also part of the break on the day into Ajaccio. Radio's coming in, and they've wound it up, Sean.
Yes, we can see here that Sky are coming to the front, and that's when the conditions start, you know, to be a bit unfavourable for everybody. When they get a bit of a side wind, that's when you see the teams taking it up. And of course, Sky, we can see, you know, standing out here taking it up on the front, and he's the guy, the specialist in these sort of conditions. It's interesting to see now, will the bunch start stretching out, and will there be, you know, breaks in the peloton? It depends on how strong the wind is coming from the side, and how long it will last for, I think, is the important thing.
Well, if they're going to make a turn and this side wind and cross head becomes a cross tail, that's an absolutely great time to go for it, Sean. Just explain how that can just increase the pace and result in a split.
Well, if you have a cross tail, of course, they will still go into echelon form, and on the road you have so many places in an echelon. You know, you can put maybe 12 or 14 riders, depending on the width of the road. That it can take that number of riders, and then, you know, they form another one, and like you can have 6, 8, 10 echelons depending on how wide the section of the road they're on can take. And with the favourable wind, it just goes real fast. If you have a headwind, it slows them down a little bit, but when they get a tailwind, the strong ones will go that faster again. So, you know, the weaker guys and the weaker echelons further back will have difficulty maintaining their distance.
Welcome back. Some bad news for you. Nasser Bouhanni has decided that it's just too much. A few moments ago, he just clipped off and decided enough was enough, looking extraordinarily grey of pallor. What a shame. Nasser Bouhanni in the car, heading home. bike stowed, and that's it. Goodness me, he looks in a very, very bad way. Incidentally, others carrying their injuries with magnificent fortitude. Geraint Thomas helping set the pace, along with Ian Stannard, also injured, of course, a couple of days ago. And so the pair of them, as they come into Beaucaire, really putting the hammer down, and a pleasure to see. And I just hope that Geraint Thomas is more than on the mend. Hairline fracture of the pelvis, don't forget. And you saw just how near the surface that pain is yesterday when he was pushed on after suffering a puncture. And yes, got back in the game very, very quickly. He might ride himself back in, Sean, but I'd be extremely surprised. They do recover well, young guys, though, such as he.
Yes, and it's amazing that Geraint Thomas is still in the race, because the first days after the crash he was in so much pain. It looked like that it was only a matter of time before he would be abandoned and having to pull out of the race. But since the team time trial on stage 4, he seems to be getting better, and just seeing him on the front there. So if he can do that, it looks like that he's feeling better, maybe not as much pain, and hopefully he can go on and recover in this race. And what a performance that would be if he can get through the next couple of days and get back into top form. And it's looking good at the moment.
It certainly is looking very good at the moment. Pace is extraordinarily high. It has been all of today. Thank you, incidentally, for all of your kind words about today. No surprise to see some of the big GC contenders as well also staying safe today, because as Sky decided to put the hammer down a few moments ago, we made a turn under a very narrow pinch point, which was a railway bridge. They might have to go under the same thing again. Oh, and as if by magic, that's maybe the reason why. I'm not sure whether the barriers are going to come down on them. We do have a couple of level crossings to be dealt with, incidentally, and it looks like they may well have timed it just a little bit wrong. But there you go. Should a break, incidentally, ever get held up by a level crossing and they get caught because of the passage of the train, it is neutralised at that point, and then they are given the time away once the barriers are up. And indeed, everyone held up so that the gap is maintained. Westra with a quick, swift rear change. Nicely done as well, Sean. He'd already prepared the wheel in advance of the mechanic getting to him. Just aids the process a little bit.
Yes, well, it is the process, of course. Yeah, you get down in the lower sprocket, in the 11th sprocket, and that way it's easier to get the wheel out. And you keep on rolling for a while. When you hear the car coming close to you, then you pull over and you just get ready for the mechanic, and that was a smooth change.
Very smooth change. The answer to our questions to the Brit with the most success will be coming up after our brief interview insert with Mike Smith in a few moments' time. Unfortunately, I can't get on Twitter at the moment, so I'll just have to give you the answer, and if you got it right, then give yourself a slap on the back. They're approaching the feed zone, incidentally, but at this pace, I'm not sure how much they'll be able to take on board. There's Greipel. He really does look so beefed up. I think he's looking heavier than I've ever seen him, actually, Sean.
Well, he's always a big, bulky rider. Difficult to see that he's any more than he was in the past years, but he's certainly got a lot of power there, and it'll be interesting to see in the days to come, can he really produce a sprint in the final.
Since 2009, you were not in the front. I think he cannot do this 2 times.
This morning prior to the start of this particular stage, and he's saying that I hope this is a little different from yesterday. I'm feeling pretty confident about today. I know that people are saying it's going to be a sprint finish, but I hope that I can be right up there and maybe pitch second or 2 against some of my main rivals. Oh, that's overconfident. I'm not sure he's going to do that, but at least he's in a confident mood. He lost a few seconds to Chris Froome in the team time trial, but I remember him saying, Carlton, after that, a few seconds in 2 or 3 weeks. We've got all the mountains to come. That's nothing, he said.
Yeah, only problem is He's got to be quicker than Froome in those mountains. That's the question. What about our competition, Mike, while the pace remains high?
Oh, well, whilst we've got all the peloton together before the action really starts blowing up in our faces. Yes, when you first mentioned it to me, my thoughts immediately went to my good friend Barry Hoban, who incidentally is the guest of honour, I'm told, at Hull Thursday's dinner this November, Friday, November the 22nd. Hope you don't mind if I get a little plug in, because I normally go to it myself. The Hull Thursday dinner, Barry Hoban, the guest of honour. There you go. Anyway, Barry competed in 12 tours, but then when I looked at my records, I suddenly remembered Sean Yates, of course, also completed in 12 Tours de France, and David Miller is right now this minute on his 12th Tour de France. So we've got 3 British riders, all with 12 to their names. Now, Barry has completed 11. That at the moment is the best. 11 from 12, not bad. David, if he does finish, will also be on 11 completions out of 12. So the 3 men who have taken part in the most tours, for Britain that is, Sean Yates, Barry Hoban, and now David Miller. But you know, Carlton, you've got a man sitting next to you. He competed in 14, and he completed 12 of them. Mr. Kelly, chapeau, Sean.
That's why he wrote down "pa!" exclamation mark when you said 11 Tour de France's. 84.4 kilometres to go. Sean, this looks unsustainable, this pace.
Well, it's going to be unsustainable for some, and you know, we can see that again through the feeding station. It's just going at a real fast pace here, you know, movement all the time. A moment ago we had Saxo Bank very much to the front, and you know, they've flipped back a bit, and it's just changing all the time. BMC up here, we can see Sky very much to the fore here on our right hand side as well. So it is going to, you know, take its toll later in the stage, and if we do get conditions where it gets more of a side wind and it blows up later in the day, still with 83.7 kilometres to go, of course, there will be some riders who will pay the price.
Very much so. You just saw Blair Cadry there, been involved in a couple of breaks, but unfortunately for him also part of those that tumbled. And you saw the flags there, Sean, just being blown, and also the amount of debris that's in the air. That's not being raised by the helicopter necessarily. They're going past recently mown fields. They may well just be a little bit dusty. Look at that. Now, that is a crosswind. That's why everyone is together at the moment, and the pace being maintained. If you are unlucky enough just to drop off the back, and it's only a matter of about 10 metres, Sean, and suddenly you're having to pile on the pressure to yourself just to get back on. Yes,
well, of course, when you haven't got the drafting effect, you know, sitting in the group, if it's a group of 170 riders, or it's a group of 20 riders, if you can get in the slipstream of the rider in front of you and a number of riders in front of you, you know, it's a huge energy saving. And it's always, you know, the powerful guys, the specialists in riding crosswinds, can ride up the front, and they form the fourth echelon. And if you see this road here, you probably could get 15, maybe 18 riders up front, and then you have another echelon which is just behind. So it's interesting to see if we will see the echelons, you know, getting formed here, as we see
Gadray
is having mechanical.
And Tony Martin's got an issue as well, we're hearing, and that's a rear puncture. See the release. And straight on, very good, nice and tidily done. Camera trying to avoid our matador here as Sean Gadray gets back underway. He should have really olayed him with the flag there. 82 kilometres to go. He's back and on his bike.
He made it his business to get on.
Well, he did a good job of that. And he's got company as well. Back on Soleil have been quite busy as well. Fletcher's done a great job of sort of turning back the years. I think that job may have already been completed, to be honest. And suddenly they come into a more protected area by the trees. The fir trees here offering up a little bit of a wooded wall. And they're not sitting up and waiting for them, but just naturally the pace is easing. They're not having to drive it on because they've got these high tree protection. They'll be out from cover in a moment. Should we have a line? Welcome back. We're hearing 2 abandons today. We're waiting on confirmation on Kesiakov. Would have gone well in the mountains. Half-decent time trialist as well. So, unfortunately for Astana, they've lost a man. And as you know, as you've seen right here, Nasabawani also today, just too much. The pace was too much. Well, they went through the feed zone, and just before the break, you saw Jan Bekkelants come to the front and say, look, lads, this is silly. And it was. Hardly anyone managed to take on a food bag. They went through the feed zone at 60 kilometres per hour. And so the poor old Soigneurs who were handing out the bags almost had their arms ripped off. I know there's a chance for them to go back to the cars and get feed. And maybe that's what's going on right now. So there's a knock-off of all hostilities by general agreement. Sean, it was just too much.
Well, the problem is when you have everybody is nervous and your teams pushing on to be in the front of the peloton. That's what happens. You come to the feed zone. As you come, the last 2-3 kilometers before you get there, teams want to be in the front position to get the feed bags, and you just arrive too fast, and then nobody gets their feedback. But it's nothing new. We've seen it in the past. I've seen it in the past. I've been in there, and it just takes a rider maybe to make a call. Sometimes they listen, other times they just continue on. And there was a little bit of a downtime there, but it's not going to last for long. We can see this team still trying to keep the front position of the peloton, and I don't think this is going to drop off a lot. It's going to be like this for the day. We're in this area where it's turning a lot. The stage, it keeps on changing direction, and everybody is nervous that we get a section where it's going to be really full side on wind, and if a team really goes, then they all want to be up there ready to get into the action.
Well, it's a wide highway, plenty of options here, so you can move through to the front when you want. Personally speaking, Sean, I think it's because they went through the feed zone so fast, people didn't get fed. And you couldn't take a chance of going back to the car because of the pace. It would take too much effort to get back on, and so riders were missing out on... Here's the bottles coming now. They've been back to the cars. They've had a hiatus to get fed and watered, frankly, because they missed their bags. There we are. That's our guess. I think that is possibly the way it's panned out. I think you're absolutely right, Sean. I don't think it'll be long before this all kicks off yet again.
Yes, well, it's just looking more and more it's going to kick off, but it's the conditions that will decide. I think if we get the wind conditions that were forecasted and they're in the right direction, well then there's no question it will have to kick off, and we will see this echelon effect. And we've talked about it this morning, and we talked about it at the beginning of the race as well, the stages that are dangerous stages for the general classification when we could have windy conditions, and we're in that zone at the moment. Today is one of the stages, and we can see it hasn't really kicked off keeping it 100%, but just so much movement here in the front of the bunch, and to get your feedback as you came through the feed station, so many riders missing it, and there's domestics are going to have to go back and get some bottles, because still with 76.8 kilometres to go, they're going to have to get the liquid on board, because if you do not, well then you're going to really just run out of energy very quickly.
We're seeing an awful lot of bananas being downed, gel bars and bottles being handed over. Sky were leading when it was when the request or demand. This is absolutely, well, I think we've got confirmation that that's what's happened, Sean. That is incredible. I think the record number, incidentally, of bottles, bidons that have actually gone into a jersey is 28, but somebody's going to tell me otherwise. One suspects that some manufacturers are going to just go for the record by producing an extra elastic, stretchy jersey. I guess the trick is to buy a treble XL and yourself be the size of Mike Smith. And then you've got more bottle room. But anyway, there is a record somewhere, but I think it was during an event is the record, so don't try it at home. Big split underneath, big crowds as well, Sean. Good show.
Yes, very big crowds, and as we can see, they're pushing out onto the road, and we're going through the section here where traffic islands. The way it's riding at the moment, I'd not be surprised if we see some crashes here, because everything is so nervous, and the rear end of the peloton, the guys are suffering big time just to keep in contact, and it's going to be a very tiring day for everybody.
Extraordinarily tiring. It has been busy. It's been very pacey. We'll have more of that later on. Today, teeing itself up for a classic sprinters' day, albeit with the wind getting involved. We've had an intermediate sprint. It was Andre Greipel that came to the fore, edging Mark Cavendish at the line for that. It wasn't really feisty contended, unlike the end today, which is going to be reasonably brutal, one imagines. The wind itself has offered up most of the obstacles today. We did have a Category 4 climb of no great import, no change in the King of the Mountains competition. The Col de Vaid, it was that they went over, and after they came down off that, the pace started to rise because of the strong wind. That wind has been blowing from various different directions. The wind is reasonably constant, but the route changes so much that it goes from side wind to headwind to cross tail and the rest of it. The pace was so high that when they approached the feed zone, nobody could take on correct amount of sustenance. And so, coming to the fore, sense will out. And Jan Bekeland said, do you mind if we all just knock this back a bit and go back to the cars, which is now permitted today to get food and drink anywhere, save for the last 15 kilometres. And so that's exactly what happened. They all went back, got their feed, got their bottles, and now they're getting on with the job, which is, despite the flat terrain today, going to be very, very arduous, simply because of the wind and the pace and the sheer tension of it. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back with more live here on Eurosport in just a moment. Welcome back. A hiatus in hostilities while everyone goes for cake and bananas and the rest of it, giving themselves a little treat today. I think they deserve it. Thanks for all your questions, by the way. Here's a curveball for you, Sean. Owen P says, can you please ask Mr. Kelly about the time he was ordered by PDM to mount an attack during a feed zone? Is that true?
Yes, it was. And it was something that I didn't feel comfortable with, but team orders, and it was a decision we had taken at the start of the stage morning briefing. We said windy conditions, and we're turning just at the feed zone, we're turning, and it could be a side wind, so we decided to do it, and we took it up during the just before the feed station and went through the feed zone at a very fast pace. Did not really work out because the wind wasn't as strong as we were expecting it to be, and it turned out a difficult stage later in the day. It was a stage to Marseille, actually. It was Vincent Barteau who got away later, and he won the stage. But yes, it was one of these tactics, a planned tactic. Yeah, we decided to do it, and we took it on. But it wasn't something that went down well with the other riders.
I'm not surprised. But at least they couldn't issue expletives while their mouths were full. I suppose that was the one benefit.
Well, I think it was a situation that we went through the feed station at such a fast pace, as we've seen today, that so many riders did not get their musettes, and there was a lot of giving out afterwards. But it never really slowed up after that, because there was other attacks, and it continued on all the way to Marseille that day. So it made it a really difficult stage for everybody.
There we are. That and more fantastic anecdotes in Hungary, which is Sean Kelly's autobiography, which is out now. Can you tell I'm bidding for a free copy? 70.3 kilometres remaining. It's hot.
Au départ, à côté de Stefano Zanatta, le directeur sportif de Peter Sagan. L'année dernière.
Well, as you can see, we are with Stefano Zanatta, the SD of the Cannondale team, Carlton, talking about prospects for the day. What about today is the inevitable question. Well, as you saw, Peter did a pretty good sprint yesterday, got third on the stage behind Cavendish and Boasson-Hagen. You've got to remember, he had a bad crash on the first day, and he's still hurting because of that, perhaps a little more than we hoped. Yesterday, I thought his sprint, given the circumstance, was pretty good. I think maybe he's not yet quite back to 100%. It's very difficult to get the first place, especially with Cavendish up there, but it's something that we can build on.
Est-ce que vous connaissez, vous, l'arrivée?
This is a finish which we have done before, this one into Montpellier. And I've told Peter that it is a good one for him, despite Cavendish being the obvious favourite and possibly Kittel. Peter has beaten them before, and I'm very confident that he's going to do a good finish here today when we get to Montpellier. So, a pretty confident Zanata on the part of Peter Sagan. Interesting.
Very much so. Juan Echegaray says, do you ever talk about the old days, some of your old rivals, Sean, such as Le Mans, Roche, Delgado and the rest? He never stops. You can't walk 10 feet with Sean Kelly without somebody coming up and shaking his hand, and they're usually fascinating characters. Everyone's here, aren't they, Sean?
Yes, it's amazing, the Tour of France. There's so many the past professional riders. They come along and do the tour, and in some form, driving a car for some of the journalists or the local radio. There's so many of the professionals that I compete with from all over Europe, from all over the world, that come back to the Tour de France.
Yeah, it's like a huge reunion every single year. Chabanel had a chat with us at the top of the day, incidentally, and he was talking about how brutal this race has been already, and I think that's a character of it. It's been extraordinarily tough, and even on paper, a day such as today, people are saying, well, there's the parkour, and wind might blow up a bit, but it's really a transition day. Anything but. It's turning out to be a day that is a real test, and it's already taken some prisoners. Unfortunately, at the top of the day, in case you missed it, Jürgen van der Broek, knee damage yesterday, swelled up like a good one, and they drained a whole load of fluid off it, 85 cc's we're hearing, and then the knee locked up. Maybe they should have left a bit behind. Yes, that was not good. Kosakov is actually off the bike as well. He's pulled out, withdrawn. Maxime Bouet, broken wrist yesterday in that big pile-up behind the sprint. He was out before we started. Nasser Bouani has given up the ghost and succumbed, unfortunately, to a stomach problem. 30 kilometres per hour, cross tailwind, Sean, and look at the pace, and they are easy at it as well.
Well, I think they're lucky and have been for quite a long time. We can see they're getting the shelter, from the trees here, and if we get some sections where it's really open, get into the total open countryside, well then that will cause problems, and you need 5-10 kilometres really for the Etienne to form and everybody to get real nervous and push it on. Here we're getting little sections where they get a little bit of wind, but not for long enough time, so the bunch is still very much all intact.
Thank you very much for your questions, by the way. Plenty of time for us to have a chat with you today as we just dip under the 60 or head towards 66 kilometres to go marker. When the terrain does open up, that's when it will get very lively. It's just come by one of these stockades here. And yes, it's a square flat front to the peloton at the moment, and it means that those riders at the back, you can see they're able to save something as well. A punishing pace from that far out, Sean, it doesn't really favour anybody, and it was to nobody's advantage. And I think it's to the general welcoming that request to just knock it back a bit has been adhered to.
Well, it looked like it was being adhered to for a moment, but I don't think it's lasted long. We can see here they're going at a very fast rate all the time, and they have been all day. The conditions, the forecast has just, made everybody nervous, and the team directors this morning, you can be guaranteed that they were, making sure the riders keep to the front all the time today, because you never know here. You can turn left or right, and you can get the side wind, for 10-15 kilometres very, very easily, and that's, a disaster if you're not in the front 30 or 40 riders. So everybody is just wound up for today's stage, and we can see it's still going on, and it's been going on for so long, and it's going to go on all day to the finish today. And it's using the tired riders at the back are really suffering here, hanging in the tail of the peloton. but the riders who are feeling good, the general classification and the sprinters, everybody is going to feel this one today, and as the race go on, it's going to take effect on a lot of the riders, and this day will be a day that they'll say, well, that was one of the difficult days of the 2013 Tour de France.
The bulls, they do bullfighting in Nîmes, but as far as I know, it is without the end of the bull. You see what I mean? I don't think it gets dispatched. I think it's, I might be wrong. I may well be wrong. But anyway, they are the toro that are used in bullfighting. Yes, we saw signs for Barcelona, incidentally. And a few of them being just frightened a little bit by the helicopter that's now backing off. They do bullfighting in Nîmes, Sean, but I'm not sure whether it's terminal for the bull. Can you remember?
No.
Mike Smith will know. He's into his beef sandwiches.
I was in Nîmes only a couple of years ago, and in fact I actually went to the Place des Toreadors in Nîmes. It's a wonderful building, an old Roman Colosseum. But even my depth of knowledge doesn't go that deep. I do not know. Somebody out there, I'm sure, will let us know.
Well, I hope they don't, because they look like fine beasts. Not of the field, but of the arena. There we are. 64.2 kilometres to go. There is, incidentally, a Twitter site, Les Vaches de Tours, which looks specifically at the cows along the way. And so we do our best, just on their behalf, to highlight them when possible. There you go. Mike Nugent, not related to Ted, I assume, who's deaf these days, the heavy rocker. Yeah, Mike Nugent says Niçoise shouldn't really have full leaves. It should be shredded. And without anchovies, it's not a Niçoise, just a bad salad. You're absolutely right. And I had it in Nice. How disappointing is that? Welcome back. And I think this is a little bit of an analgesic or something. Oroz clearly not feeling terribly well, and so gets himself a generally available and perfectly above board a little bit of pain relief by the looks of things. Might be tummy trouble as well that he is dealing with. Thanks for all of your questions, incidentally. Got one here. My mum, Wendy, says Tony Leggett. She's age 79. She wants to know why you say kilometre instead of kilometre. Well, I was told by the venerable Brian Venner during a commentary once, lovely bloke, that a mileometer measures miles and a kilometre would be measuring a kill. And the distance is a mile or a kilometre, not a kilometre. An ometer is a measuring device, hence mileometer, and so kilometre is not a kilometre. I hope that explains why we say kilometre, which is apparently, according to Brian Venner, the correct pronunciation. And I like the argument so much, I've stuck with it ever since. Kilometre wrong, kilometre right, in my book. 60.8 kilometres to go. And the pace still remains very, very quick, although not as frantic as it was earlier on. Mike, kilometre or kilometre?
Yes, I'm with you. Ometer, as you've so succinctly put it, a measuring device, and therefore kilometre. Couldn't have put it better myself.
I thank Brian Venner for saying that and putting me up on it. There we are. But each their own. And I never pick anyone else up on it, but I was asked, so there you go. If you'd like to join the conversation, incidentally, it's Twitter, at Carlton Kirby, and if you hashtag it at Eurosport Cycling, or no, if you hashtag it, hashtag Eurosport Cycling, it goes everywhere. Cadell Evans looking as pale and wan as usual, and Sean, Cadell in the mountains, when he gets to the absolute limit or is approaching it, head goes to one side, gets a little bit grey of pallor, and he's looking like that now, and that really tells you how much effort he's had to put in on a terrain he's not very fond of.
Yes, well, the smaller lightweight riders, the climbers, they don't like this aggressive racing on the flat, very fast pace, and going on and on for a long, long time. And the stage today, it's going to be 176.5 kilometres. They seem to be going for most of the day in the earlier part, the first number of kilometres, they took it a bit easy, but after that it's always quite a strong pace, and you know, they've been really pushing on for the past 2 hours. It's pretty much you know, almost full on. So I'm not surprised that there's some of the smaller lightweight riders are suffering, but everybody's suffering out there. Even, you know, the real strong flat men with the warm conditions, and when you race like this, you know, from the kilometre zero, it's starting to, you know, hurt a lot, or hurt everybody to a certain extent.
It certainly is. The hurt is on, and so the questions have to be asked. Simon Wills wants to know who is the vote for today. Will Cav double up, he says, or will Sagan or Gosnickit? Well, we have no idea until we get to the end, because it's all about what you've left on the road, and that is the reason why. The flags are billowing, nice and fresh for those standing at roadside, and the muggy atmosphere that we've had over the last couple of days has dissipated simply because of this wind. Incidentally, in the middle of summer, when this wind blows, it can almost be painful to actually ride into the wind. The very heat of it seems to be magnified, Sean, when you get the very, very hottest days. Thankfully, we're not quite there yet.
Yes, but when you get the hot days, if you have a bit of time when they ride along at a bit easier pace, then it's you can get the teammates to go back to the car, get their drink, so you can, you know, cover that easily. Where today it's proving difficult, and it's going to be difficult as we get closer to the end. Still, with 58 kilometres to go, riders are going to, you know, push on a bit more as we get closer to the finish. It will get more nervous, and in that case, just to get drinks in the car is going to be very difficult. And we can see, you know, the Sky riders just having a chat here on the front again, and, you know, trying to calm things down.
Yes, I'm actually. It actually looked slightly heated as well, as if to say to Orica Green Edge, you're killing everybody here, including yourselves. Why don't you pack it in? But you know what? They've got their own game plan, and presumably they're absolutely sticking to it. And why not? The speed through the feed zone was over 60 kilometres per hour. They had to halt up just a little bit to allow everyone to take on board the calories that they need. And now with just over 57 to go, Sean, if they keep it up like this, we're going to be finished in an hour.
Well, it's going to keep up. I don't think we can see it really slowing down at this point, because you know, we're getting into the final, and when you're in the conditions today, it's just going to go real fast in the end, because on a normal day we see them picking it up maybe 30 or 40 kilometres out, when the you know, the problem with the wind conditions, side winds, is not there at all. Where now, with that just 57 kilometres to go, it's going to continue. We can see there the Sky rider, it was Kinnock, I think, was the one who was up front, and he was trying to calm things down. He was talking to the other riders, and there was a Movistar rider as well, and he seemed to be saying, well, you know, just take it easy for a moment. But immediately Ulrika Green Edge want to push it on, and, you know, they have a tactic here to keep the pace high, and they're just continuing on here, and it's not dropping off at all in pace.
No, I think they're trying to break a few hearts out there. After being accused of not doing much work in post-race interview by Mark Cavendish, he said, Orica Green Edge, nice to see them doing some work for a change. I think he was having a little bit of a dig at them. Well, today, I don't know whether they've responded to that, but they've gone out there and done exactly the same. I don't know whether they are trying to wear down a few legs, because if Matt Goss is feeling particularly up for a long game today, then you never know, it might knock it out of some sprinters. Mark Cavendish, though, is extraordinarily well protected, and you just see him hovering into sight occasionally. He's on the left-hand side of your screen, so the right-hand side of the road, just amongst or just behind the Belkin boys. Some of the marshes. Incidentally, if you ever come across marsh raised lamb, salt marsh lamb, that's it, finally got there, salt marsh lamb. It basically eats seaweed close to the coast, and so they graze the sort of sandbanks there. It naturally salts its own meat, and it's amazing. So if you are a carnivore and you like lamb, look out for salt marsh lamb. They don't really let it go that much out of France. It seems to be a particular kind of way of raising the furry critters. But yes, delicious it is too, I might add. So salt marsh lamb, if you ever see it, go for it. 50, and you don't mind me, obviously. 55.1 kilometres to go. Arrow straight, Sean. Very little protection on occasion when they come out into open areas, and they're being offered at least a little protection. I imagine that these trees were planted for precisely this reason.
Yes, I reckon so. And you can see here it's just opening up a bit, and that's where the problem could start to come for some of the riders to stay close to the front, and it's that. For that reason, they're staying, so close to the front, and so many teams wanting to keep on the front end of the peloton, because when you get a section where it's going to open up, they're all just waiting for that, and if a team takes it up, that's where we will see all hell breaking loose.
Sidewind it is. Now, it would be hitting them from the other side of those trees, so the trees are taking the hit. That's to actually stop wind erosion of the fields, which, as you see in a lot of agriculture here, so they've built them as windbreaks, and these guys taking full advantage. However, once they come past the arable fields, it'll open up, and then it's going to hit them. And I think that's possibly the reason why there seems to be a little bit of a battle for space yet again. It's fascinating, Sean. The terrain may not be interesting, but the day is fascinating.
Yes, and it's not the big mountain stages that sometimes you can see a lot of aggressive racing. The flat stages, when you get conditions like this, they can be also real exciting.
Mike?
Yes, we've got some Orca Greenedge views on today's crosswinds coming up for you now. Listen in.
Bordeaux in English is crosswind, so that's wind that comes from the side. It can come from many, many different angles. The Tour de France is obviously it's a very long race and a very taxing race, so every bit of energy you can save, with the crosswinds especially, you can save a lot of energy.
The Bordeaux or a crosswind attack is basically when a team decides to attack in the crosswind. And like I try to explain, when the wind's coming from this side, everyone is trying to get the slipstream, and eventually you run out of road, and then they can't. It's not possible for riders to sit here in the wind. So eventually they explode and leave gaps, and in front, the team or the riders that keep momentum going go a lot faster because they're all working together, rotating, and behind, obviously, it takes a lot longer to get organised.
The Tour de France is usually won in the time trials or won in the mountain stages, but the Tour de France can certainly be lost in the crosswind stages. And you definitely need people in your team who can support your leaders, whoever they may be.
There you are, Carlton, some of the views from Orica Greenedge of the problems of the crosswinds, which they are experiencing very much. But the interesting thing is, Carlton, it might be interesting to hear your views on this, Sean. The echelons which we expected haven't formed for some considerable distance. The peloton has been pretty well, like you see it now, more or less, all across the road. Answers, please, on a postcard.
Absolutely. We won't get an answer from Sean Kelly at the moment because he's out having a comfort break as we speak, and hopefully as well coming back with a cup of coffee after he's washed his hands very carefully. Incidentally, the pace remains high. Felix Helmsley says there's pretty good saltmarsh lamb in the UK too. Mike Taylor says Romney Marsh has got some fantastic saltmarsh lamb. I know that the lamb that feeds on Sampha in Norfolk is particularly lovely. Joe Cromwell also says saltmarsh lamb better from Wales near the grower Swansea area. And Kentish says if you want saltmarsh lamb, then go to saltmarshlamb.co.uk and fill your boots. There you go. It's amazing what sparks you lot off out there. If you'd like to join the conversation, incidentally, and maybe get back to some bit of cycling, shall we? Then it is Carlton Kirby, at Carlton Kirby. And if you hashtag it, if you tag it Eurosport Cycling, then your messages go far and wide within the Eurosport family globally. So, a lot of radio action at the moment. See Belkin there, and they're unfamiliar perhaps to you, maybe more so since if you've been watching since the beginning of this Tour de France. Green, white and black there, dead centre of your screen. Formerly Blanco, formerly Rabobank. Rabobank decided to pull sponsorship after all these years, but were contractually bound to continue doing so. And so they had a Blanco team created, Blanco being devoid of sponsorship, and they finally got one with Belkin, a telecommunications company, and as a result, you see their green, black and white livery with Belkin written on it. I've got to say, looks really nice, I think. There is, we've seen wind pumps and all kinds of other manner of things. Haven't seen any hills, really. Had one climb today. It was rather beautiful, up to a fortification and then off the other side. Just category 4. It's wide and wide open. And, yes, almost the throttle as well, I've got to say, because when they start heading for town, and that's going to be rather soon, I expect this will explode. Somebody is going to inject something rather quick pace-wise into proceedings. We'll keep an eye, take a break. Welcome back. There we have it. Apparently, the course Camarguais, we are in the Camargue after all, is a form of bullfighting where they just remove ribbons from the charging bulls, so it's more acrobatics than anything else. So the bulls just stay fit this time of year, wait for the festivals to begin. How nice is that? Much better than running the poor dears through in public. There we go. Just under 49 kilometres to go. It's been a windy day. It's had its moments. It's also had those who did not start. Jurgen van den Broek, probably foremost amongst those. He and Maxime Bouet of AG2R, unfortunately, no longer part of proceedings. Likewise, Nasser Bouhanni stepped off the bike, and Freddy Kazayakov of Astana as well. So fastest t-shirt down of the Frenchman, Nasser Bouhanni, as well. It's been a difficult day. It's been extraordinarily high-paced. They ran through the feed zone at 60 kilometres an hour, had to knock it back ever so slightly in order that everyone was allowed to get fed. Well, the reason for the pace is the wind, and the wind can cause breaks, and indeed a snapping of what can be a very thin line of riders on occasion. Hence, they're all bunching together at the moment. There is no separation amongst the pack just yet, but expect it to be on the cards, as everyone just wants to be in a good place. Pierre Roland there in polka dot jersey, just drifting over to the side of the road. Orica Green Edge have done most of the work today. There they are with their green, blue and white. They have, of course, got the yellow jersey as well. Simon Gerrans carrying that with some aplomb after finishing very well placed yesterday after the sprint, in which Mark Cavendish, of course, took his 24th Tour de France victory. Will he get a 25th today? Well, we had an intermediate sprint earlier on. It was Andre Greipel that took that ahead of Mark Cavendish and Peter Sagan. And there is the bull right now. I don't know whether he's got a technical issue. Looks like that is most certainly the case. Back wheel. This will be swift. And I wonder if any of the other teams are going to take advantage and attack. Well, hence the sheer panic that's going on at the moment. It was front wheel, he thought it was back. That was rather strange, Sean. He went and unclipped the back wheel, and it was the front wheel that was a problem. How weird.
Well, I think he's made a change of both wheels. Looks like that maybe he's putting on
racing them.
Different wheels. We can see here the higher profile rims, maybe possibly starting out this morning with the forecast for the windy conditions, not going for the higher profiles. We can see here he has got at least, what, 50 mil, maybe a bit more. So it looks like that just changing the tools.
You did hear them shout now. There we are. So essentially hasn't changed his bike, but has changed both wheels, so comfortable with the machine. You'd think there'd be a spare just hanging around, but well, maybe he's got his favourite. Look at the pace that we've got here. Amazing. And it has been Orica Green Edge. Omega Pharma have been up there, I've got to say, but Orica Green Edge that have been doing most of the work. Radio Shack it was that called for a hiatus in proceedings. And indeed, the drive off the front, they sort of squared it off. But the pace has not stopped, and we've got 46.9 to go before we get to town. Sean, let's talk about the run-in today as Sagan gets brought back in. I don't think it was punctures. I think you're absolutely right. Both of them. It's not unheard of course. Cadel Evans' the tack gate last year was the same, but I think he's gone for something a bit more focused for the sprint.
Yes, it looks the case that he's just made a wheel change, and possibly starting out this morning with the weather forecast, you know, very strong winds. Forecasters decided to go for a lower profile in the stage, but as the wind is not maybe as strong as everybody was expecting, because I think there was there was more, I think, of a forecast for higher wind conditions than we have actually seen so far in this stage.
So no real breaks to speak of today, I'm afraid. We had a lone rider from Cofidis who decided to go up the road and test everyone out. Not much room here as well for the bull to get back. It seems everyone has got snake written on their backsides, apart from Sagan, who's got bull. I think there may well be one other with bull written, but yes, there is. In fact, it's his teammate just ahead of him, which is Van Borg. Not quite sure how they get to choose which, but anyway, there you are. 45.7 to go. Sean, very little activity when it's come to breaks today, but you never know. You could get a big split in the peloton at any moment. We still know that, and that's why the teams are putting so much effort in, side of the road and at the front.
Yes, well, there's still time, still 45.5 kilometres to go, and if the wind changes direction and becomes a side wind, well then, we could see gaps opening up very quickly. And when we came to this area, Le Grand Mort in 2009, there was a group of 27 riders got to the finish, and that wasn't far from the finish when they really started to push on. It must have been inside the final 30 kilometres, so there is sufficient time if the conditions, give the opportunity to the teams and the stronger riders up front to really push on the pace and break up the peloton.
They're coming into town. It's destination Montpellier, let's not forget. At 9 kilometres to go, they head underneath, I believe it's a highway, not a railway bridge, but a highway. We were on, I think, that highway today as we crossed over it. Very well marshalled traffic-wise, but we got lost a couple of times. But anyway, they then hit a roundabout. It's a very large one, the Place Ernest Grenier, so a big square, incidentally. They go around the edge of it, or the edge of a quarter of it, take a left-hand turn, and then very, very quickly they're on high-speed roads almost all the way. There's one pinch point as they go underneath a small road, so there is a little bit of a pinch point. It comes just after the Flamme Rouge, incidentally, but it's almost arrow straight, Sean. There's a gentle waver to the road, first left and then right, but you barely notice it if you are one of those sprinters that are focused on just eating up that road.
Well, again, yesterday we did look at the finish, and it looked, a perfect finish for a big one sprint, quite wide roads. Again today, a little bit more technical, I think, today. There's a bit more turning in the final number of kilometres. When we get to the 6 kilometres to go, it turns a bit. Nothing really tight, but still with a big bunch of riders, it could cause problems.
Sagan's still got problems. He's not happy. He keeps looking down at his bike, looking back at his car. I'm not sure what the issue is, Sean, but he's got a problem.
Well, he's having a problem getting back in. It's taking a big effort, and if it wasn't a mechanical problem he had and just decided to change the wheels, he's making a big effort here to get back into the peloton again. We can see the car coming through there, so maybe that's just a little adjustment on the brakes. When you change wheel, of course, you can just touch the brake blocks, and it can push a little bit to left or right, and maybe it's not centered enough for his liking.
As a pro, when you get on a bike, you know within a few pedal strokes just whether the bike is functioning absolutely perfectly. You can tell even the amount of flex that's in the bike, something that increases over time. And he'll read that. If he's not absolutely totally convinced about the package that is underneath him, he's going to want to change. But I'm just hoping, as he didn't change the frame, that that's not to his detriment.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. Just it's possibly just a small adjustment needs to be made. The bike, some riders just take light to a bike and they feel that little bit comfortable on it, but all the bikes they have got, they would be exactly the same size. The setup would be exactly the same, but still there's some riders just feel that it's a little bit one bike is a little bit better, they feel that they'll be comfortable on. But when you get a big crash and the bike is wiped out, well then there's nothing you can do. You have to move on to your next bike, and it'll be interesting to see what was the problem there with Sagan. I just reckon here we go, the spanner's out and it's just adjusting the brake blocks.
Well, we often talk about the magic spanner, which seems to help relay riders back on. This is none of that. This is serious, because it was hampering his drive back into the rear of the peloton. Now, on some people's minds might be that some teams might be minded to go for this, but it's just too far out to attack at this point and put Sagan in trouble.
Yes, well, I don't think there's anybody going to attack here because the pace is so high. It's difficult to attack. It's really the terrain that, you know, can produce something here. If you get it real open country where we get a very strong side wind, well then, you know, there'll be many teams, many riders will push on up front, and that will form the peloton, or make the peloton break up and form the echelons. So far I think it's working out quite well for a lot of the riders that do not feel comfortable in this sort of conditions. The climbers, the lightweight riders, they're getting through, you know, getting through so far without having any major problems.
As we approach the line, they're going to be cruising at around about 60 kilometres per hour. They'll be nudging towards the 50s fairly shortly, and so this 41 kilometres remaining should be out of the way in around about, work it out, half an hour, 35 minutes, that kind of thing. Very, very fast they're going, maybe 40 minutes, we'll see. But yes, they are at a pace right now, as you can see, and there's so many heads looking over shoulders to see who's coming through. It's not even a comfortable place to be out front, Sean, because you're constantly looking over your shoulders to see where the threat's coming from.
Well, it's there's no comfort zone in this group today. If you're riding up front, you know, it takes a big effort. Some riders are a little bit comfortable more than others. If you can sit back in the group here and stay, you know, in 15-20 position, and some riders can do that. Other riders do not feel comfortable in there in the middle of the group because they feel they're getting crowded out, and they do get crowded out and they get pushed back. But, you know, if you look at Mark Cavendish here, we haven't seen him in any of our shots at the moment. We can see some of the quick step riders. Cavendish, we have seen little flashes of him here, and that's what they've got to do. If you cannot see the rider, but he's still in the top 20 riders, he's doing a real good job. He's keeping himself out of the wind, conserving as much energy as possible. And if you can do that, but there's not many riders can stay in there in the second or third line and hold that position and be always in the top 20-25 riders.
Michael Kwiatkowski, incidentally, is Omega Pharma Quickstep, and he's been showing that young rider's jersey on occasion here.
Yes, well, they're having a really good tour, Omega Pharma Quickstep, with the young jersey classement, and getting off, you know, with a stage victory with Mark Cavendish yesterday. Team time trial for Omega Pharma Quickstep was a little bit disappointing, you know, so close but just not getting it in the end. And being the World Time Trial champions, you know, it would have been really nice for them to win it, but unfortunately Green Edge was just that fraction too fast.
Gary Hill, thanks. He's nailed it. Why have they got snake or bull written on their backside? It's the choice of saddles by Fitzik. So there you go. They basically get to choose which saddle they're most comfortable with, and if you go for snake or the bull or whatever it is, I presume they've probably got something called a scorpion as well. Presumably that would be written on your backside. There you go. Particularly if you're born in early November, such as me. 39.2 kilometres, little less than that to go right now. We're going to take ourselves another break while it's knocked off. It's an opportune time to do that. We expect this to go crazy fairly shortly. This is Ryder Shadar. Fell yesterday and just has ill fortune when it comes to this event. There are many like him, though. Back in a moment. Welcome back. We're just dead centre screen. We've got Mark Cavendish. He runs well here, Sean.
Yes, well, the last time we were here, of course, he did win the stage, and that was when he was riding with HTC. And Tyler Farrar was second, Pataki was third. So it's a place. And the last three stage finishes we had here in Montpellier were all big one sprints. It looks like it's going to be a fourth one today.
Well, we're going to dispatch with these kilometres at the pace they're going at the moment. We reckon in around about half an hour. So it's going to be well ahead of schedule. And there is our leader, Simon Gerrans. Yet again, his yellow jersey's on the line. He's got to track Darrell Impey's teammate because it remains that if they're separated by 9 places at the end, then Impey gets the jersey. It'd be quite nice for Impey, obviously, but there's never been a South African winner, even Great Robbie Hunter.
No, well, a yellow jersey, a yellow jersey in the Tour de France. No, a stage winner, yes. Yeah, it's a position. It's a difficult one to control because Darrell Impey is one of the riders who's always up there in the end, and he is a specialist to prepare the sprint for Matty Goss. So he is, a real good finisher, as Simon Gerrans is as well. We've seen that when he won the stage in a big group sprint. So it's a difficult one, but I'm sure they have within the team. There's a tactic there, and they've decided what way they're going to do it. But again, you can never forecast in bike racing exactly what's going to happen. We see yesterday in the final with the crash. There could be a crash 5 or 6 kilometres from the finish, and one of those riders could, God forbid, get caught up behind that crash, and so it is a little bit of nervous times. And Simon Gerrans would like to hold on to the jersey as long as possible, but also Impey would like to get into yellow for a couple of days.
Absolutely. Onto one of these exterior roundabouts. It's a big old place, incidentally, Montpellier. It does have its beautiful parts, and so, as I reminded yesterday, does Marseille, although you do have to dig. We got lost and were helped by a very kind lady who guided us out of the city yesterday. We're doing well at getting lost at the moment, sure.
Well, there is the Tour de France. Sometimes it can be so well signposted when you do the final run in and to get onto the final number of kilometres. Other days, you get a arrow and then that's it. And I think the arrow men, it depends on what sort of humour, what sort of a night they had the night before.
There's De Gent with his red numbers. Combativity award from yesterday, part of the escape. No escape today, saved for a lone effort very, very early on by Mate for Cofidis. And in fact, it was such lunacy that he got up to about 4 minutes and then gave up because nobody was interested. And the pace was high anyway, and to sustain that would have been impossible alone. Couldn't tempt anyone to join him, not surprised. It's been more than enough that anyone could do just to stay with the pack here, and they thin down off a roundabout. Now, as you approach a roundabout, you break into it, you sail round it, of course, if you are out front, and as you're in the lead, there's a compression effect that goes on behind you, and you escape from it very, very quickly. As a result, you get this big stringing out because of roundabouts, and we've got lots of them to deal with on the ring road around Montpellier before we finally make the turn into town. That's not going to happen until around 9 kilometres, and we've got a crash, unfortunately, I'm hearing. Well, we'll wait and see. And we're hearing it's Omega Pharma Quickstep involved. Do not know the personnel just yet, but Race Radio is calling it right now. We'll get to the pictures for you as soon as we can. Sean, this is the danger, especially when you've got this kind of pace. I hope it wasn't a miscall.
Yes, well, it's going to be a very tense running at the moment. We can see still pushing on the front, but they haven't really upped the pace big time. And
it's Mark Cavendish. It's Mark Cavendish. Now, did he have a tumble on that roundabout? We're hearing it was a crash, incidentally, so he's back on. No punctures, but that can knock you, Sean.
Yes, it can knock you. We can see his bike there doesn't have a frame number, so has he changed his bike? It looks to be the case. And is there other riders involved as well? We see some of the riders from Belkin actually going back there also, so it's possible that there are other riders further back. We can see there's a lot of riders trying to make their way up here to the peloton.
Well, the pace the peloton's going at the moment is quite a punishing one. That's a long that's a big amount of ground to make up, Sean.
Yes, it looks quite a big gap there at the moment, and it depends on who's back there. If there's a lot of riders got held up with the crash, we could see a big group getting together, but still it's going to be a big effort at this time. Just over 33 kilometres to finish. It's something you don't want, and we will see, I think, a lot of the Omega Pharma Quickstep starting to come back. As we can see, Terpstra very close to the front there. He was right on the front of the bunch when we had the crash being called over Race Radio.
Drama here. Well, we can only assume, because we didn't see the crash, that it happened because of that compression effect we were talking about around the roundabout, especially if a number of riders were involved. And it doesn't look like anyone's particularly on the attack at the moment, Sean, which bodes well for Mark Cavendish, but also tells us that maybe there's quite a number of different riders involved.
Well, I think at the moment the crash was announced, it had been slowed down. It was knocked off. The pace was knocked off quite a bit in the peloton, and they're just continuing at the same pace, really.
There we are. BMC with their red and black sky just coming through. They'll be thinking of Bosenhagen, who missed out yesterday, of course. Just seen the gurning face of Tommy Vogler amongst the green livery, dark green that is, of Europe car. They're not averse to having a crack. They don't feel like they owe the World Tour boys anything. And quite often you see them going on the attack and causing a great deal of disconcerted response from the peloton. Yes, not too happy about that kind of behaviour. Nonetheless, here they come through these little technical roundabout sections as we continue to skirt the city. And there's Mark Cavendish, and you can see he's taken a big hit on the left-hand side. The white British national champions jersey showing some scuff marks here. His radio's almost popped out. He's rolled over on his left, and well, alongside him here is Sepp van Mark of Blanco. Now, the thing about Sepp van Mark is he's a quick man himself, and so they can kind of help each other with the same sort of pace level at the moment, but they want to save some reserves as well. 31 to go. 42 seconds the gap, Sean. Back to these guys.
Yes, it is, and as we see with the overhead shot, it was quite a substantial gap, but he's in the drafting of the cars, getting on to the end of the cavalcade now, so he will be able to get back into the bunch. But again, it's something you do not want at this late stage in the day.
Absolutely not. So a lot of energy that he could have done with conserving until the end is being expended right now. If Mark Cavendish wins today, that will be sheer brilliance. But you've got to say the odds are starting to stack against the great man as he just drifts over behind the vehicle and tries to get some respite here from the wind. Out he comes. He knows the commissaires are watching him, and he does not want to get too much vehicle assist, but head goes down after he has a quick look. 37 seconds now. Sean, this is not a great retrieval under the circle. It's very, very difficult to retrieve, especially this deep into a pacey day. He's down to 33 seconds now. He's making a very, very good job of this. Oh, dangerous bunny hop, but superbly executed. Mark Cavendish taking some huge risks here. He knows today's got great possibilities for him. Let's have a look at that again. On the inside of the Euskaltel car, they all hit the brakes and knew that he was okay. Drifts over towards the police. He's got to take some risk, Sean, but that was brave.
Well, yes, brave, and Mark Cavendish is one of the brave ones. We could see there that he did not want to, knock off his speed, so just bunny hops over the roundabout and, just gets onto another car on the Saxo Tinkoff bank here and following that, and he's just getting from car to car. But we did see that, over 30 seconds he has to make up on the peloton. He's doing a great job. We did see there that he had Van Mark with him. There was also a teammate of Mark Cavendish there as well some time ago, and they have all lost contact here. But there's riders, a lot of riders in between here as we see him. He's just going to make it onto the tail end of the peloton pretty quickly. But it's an effort that you would like to not have, but that's his bike racing.
Here's negotiation going on right now. That was Kwiatkowski just being told to knock it off ever so slightly by his own teammate there. Yes, Sylvain Chavanel just trying to marshal things and saying, look, this isn't fair. I'm surprised everyone's adhered to this so well. I mean, it's nice, but wasn't expecting it to be delivered like that. Peter Velitz it is, just ahead of Mark Cavendish right now. It seems, Sean, that perhaps Mark Cavendish went down. A number of riders were slowed down but managed to get through, and he's picking his way back to those guys, bridging slowly but surely all the way back in. It looks like he might well be any moment now back on the end of the main bunch.
Yes, he is back into the main bunch here, and
job well done.
It's unfortunate we did not see how many riders were involved, but it looked like that there was a few riders that possibly came down or just got delayed with the crash, and they were also struggling there in the cars. And we can see Mark Cavendish now with Velitz, he's just pushing on, making his way to the front as quickly as possible. With just over 28 kilometers to go, he has to get back up to the front, and we're on a section here where it's not majorly wide road at the moment, but it's time to make sure that you are on the front, because again, if we get a bit of a section where they get some open roads, it could also start getting into dead zones, and we could see this peloton starting to split once again.
Well, he's back in. I imagine if they did agree to just ease up ever so slightly, knowing he's there, they may well push off right now, having done the apparently gentlemanly thing, and then just go on the attack. We'll see. 27.6 to go. He's got to save as much energy as he can now, Sean, before the final run for home.
Well, yes,
come quick, isn't it?
Yes, it is going to come quick, and he has put in a big effort here, but I don't think up front there was any such thing as a slowing down. We did see Chavanel in the front, and that's what you do. You put your teammates up front, and they take the pace setting for a moment, and then they just knock it off slightly, just slow it down, and hopefully there's no other teams and riders come over you immediately, and that is the tactic to do. But for Cavendish there, the car, the pacing of the Omega Pharma Quick Step car, that was vital importance to get into the cavalcade and then just go from car to car. But it was spectacular chasing there and a spectacular ride to get back in. The question is now, will it affect his sprint in the end? Because an effort like that, when the other sprinters are in here waiting in comfort and just waiting for this final sprint, we could see Cavendish maybe just suffering a little bit in the final sprint here today in Montpellier.
Does it amend your view, Sean, as to his potential to win today?
Well, we did see yesterday, he was the lead out by Omega Pharma Quick Step. The last number of kilometres was perfect. The last kilometres were, we see Trent in leading the last corner with Steegmans in the wheel, and then Cavendish was just really a super lead out. He looked very comfortable. At one time out of the last corner, he actually freewheeled for a moment, where for Andre Greipel, he came into the last corner, got pushed about a bit, lost a bit of his speed, lost a couple of paces, and then had to make up before they actually got to take up the final sprint, which is at 200 metres to go. So he had made a big effort before that. If Cavendish gets a lead out, he's so difficult to beat, as we see yesterday. But Greipel, I think if they can do a good lead out for him, and that was the thing yesterday, the lead out up to the final kilometre, the final 750 metres was good by Lotto Belisol, but after that it fell apart a bit.
The Castle of Death, they're all tombs, incidentally, or there are a number of tombs in there. There you go. Why is that not called the Lac Rose? They do a lot of sea salt gathering here, and as a result, I think as a result of that, it's turned the waters pink for some reason. Somebody will remind me, is it potassium that does that? Anyway, we've seen Lac Roses before, but this one's called the Lac de l'Or. There you go. Work it out for yourself. 25.2 kilometres, a little less than that now. Pace very high. Mark Cavendish has done a phenomenal job to get back in so quickly. Took some risks as well, buddy hopping roundabouts amongst the team cars. We go under the 25 kilometre to go banner, and this is a brief hiatus in hostilities here. It's not that they've knocked back at all, it's just that they're now trying to form themselves into their teams. By the time we hit 15 kilometres to go, they'll be at cruising speed, and it'll just get faster and faster and faster. It's been pacey all day. Expect it to be over 60 kilometres an hour. Mark Cavendish still looking very, very lively here. Do not discount him for victory. Likewise, though, his opponents in any sprint, when you've got this quality, you know who they are. Peter Sagan must be, if he's got his mechanical issues sorted, be a very, very happy man indeed. Andre Greipel, likewise, already won the intermediate sprint today, and so he and his Lotto Belisol boys with their golden shoulders, as we keep calling them, watch out for them. Sagan, of course, is wearing green, but it's so close to his Cannondale team. You may well think it's that particular jersey, just a team jersey. No, he's in this green points jersey right now. Marcel Kittel, young man, of course, went into yellow after winning stage one, albeit that most of the other sprinters were caught up in that crash, either on the deck or indeed balked behind it. Well, the young German might have a chance today to measure himself against the best on the planet yet again. We'll see whether he does that. Matt Goss is also here, let's not forget. and Gossi will be going for it big time, despite the fact that Orica Greenedge might be a little tuckered out after their efforts today to make sure that the yellow jersey stays in a safe place. They've done a lot of work, and here are the teams starting to get together. Now, Edvald Bosenhagen yesterday, Sean, he latched onto the back wheel of Mark Cavendish and essentially just had a lead-out man to the line. Sagan blaming that factor for the fact that he didn't finish a runner-up yesterday, Sagan.
Well, Bosenhagen had a perfect wheel yesterday, and he just followed Mark Cavendish in the final couple of 100 metres, and he was in a real good position. We could see the overhead shots when Cavendish did take over from Stigman's. Bosenhagen, wasn't able to just stay close to Cavan. There was never any possibility of him challenging for the victory, and that shows, just that explosive power of Mark Cavendish when he takes it up at the 200 metres, 180 metres before the line. They're travelling at 55, maybe 60 kilometres per hour, but when he just goes for his sprint, he has that sudden acceleration again, and he can take a bike length and a half out of a guy like Bosenhagen, who is a real good sprinter, a real powerful guy. That shows that extra that Cavendish has got.
He's got plenty of extra, and that's why he has such a phenomenal record, not least here at the Tour de France. 24 wins. He could make it 25 today. He's going to have to work extra hard because of having to relay himself back on. Kwiatkowski, his teammate, wearing the Young Riders jersey, Leon Pole, Polish champion, in fact, superb athlete himself, just ahead of him at the moment in the white jersey. There is Mark Cavendish with that, looks like tarmac markings on him. It's quite deep rims as well he's got as well, Sean.
Yes, and he hasn't got the frame number on his bike, so it looks like that he had to make a bike change. If you look at everybody else here, they all have got the frame numbers. It's the rules. The commissars really look out for that, and Cavendish hasn't got a frame number, so possibly had to make a bike change when he came down.
Yep, started the day correctly, of course, and I can't imagine a fine will be issued, but they're quite twitchy about that sort of thing these days. Yeah, I think once a bike change has to be made, it's very rare I've seen the number carried over. 21.5 kilometres to go, lots of street furniture to deal with, and this is the run into town. Now, about 9 kilometres out is where we can track them in for you with our mapping. Belkin to the fore. Now, really not quite sure what they're up to, Belkin. They have got Zep van Mark, who's has got a turn of speed, but I don't think he's going to be a major feature today. Stranger things have happened, I guess. Philippe Gilbert, the world champion, likewise. Is there going to be a chance for somebody to break off the front here, Sean? Not at this pace, surely.
No, there's no chance for anybody to get away in this stage. It's pan flat really on the way in. So the pace is going to be just so high. It is highly unlikely we'll see anybody clipping away, and if they do, they might get 25 metres, 30 metres off the front of the bunch, but it'll be very short-lived. We can see Belkin pulling along here, and they are of course riding, I think, for the general classification more, with Gessing and Mollema trying to keep them to the front. I don't think I don't see anybody for the sprint for Belkin up there. Just to stay out of danger and keep their general classification men in the front.
20 kilometres to go. These are going to be dispatched very, very quickly indeed. I haven't got a time for this last hour, but a speed. I should think it is just into the low 50s. They'll gradually, slowly increase that pace on the flat, albeit that they'll be knocked back on occasion by the twists and turns of the road. It is highway today, however. For much of it, doesn't get much narrower than this. There is one pinch point underneath a bridge. It's nothing serious, narrowing by about 20%. Maujor through there, 19.5 to go. Another roundabout, almost tiresome, and won't be tired if you go the wrong way. Well, they've almost split here. Didn't look that bad, but there's a longer and a shorter way round. If you take the wrong way, you'll suddenly find yourself, 10, 20 metres down. When you rejoin, and then you've got to work your way back up. So it's free energy if you take the right road through, Sean, and that kind of mapping helps.
Well, it's difficult to actually map it, but you know, sometimes a little bit of luck that you take the right way around, or the shorter way, let's call it, and you know, sometimes it can be a long way around when you take it the wrong way. You lose a number of places. You can lose 10-15 places in the peloton, and it's so important in the final, of course, but normally in the final they try and make the riders go all the same way around the roundabout. They funnel into one side, and that helps that everybody just gets, you know, a pretty fair run in the final kilometres.
Here's our destination. That looks like Port Greipel or something along those lines, to be honest. Sort of modernish development. Somebody else correct me, because I think we're a long way from there. To be honest, but there you go. Looks like a veritable holiday destination nonetheless, albeit slightly high-rise. No, I don't have it upon my notes as to where we are, but there you go. Well, Maugio. I'm being told. There you are, I'll shut my Maugio. 18.2 kilometres to go, and the water bottles are starting to be dispensed here. Everyone just getting rid of any excess weight. Contador lets one fly, if that was here. In fact, one of his teammates. 17.9 to go. Incidentally, Contador on the other side of the road, there he is, grimacing ever so slightly on the left-hand side, staying very safe. He's not going to be going for the sprint finish today, of course. But if you're new to cycling, he'll be doing his stuff in the mountains. General classification contender he is, and pretty decent time trialist as well. Gosh, there was a very much longer route through that roundabout, was there not, Sean?
Yes, you can certainly see there the guys who took the right-hand side was a much shorter way around, and it's something difficult, you know, to make the calculation as you come to it. We did see some of the riders. One of the Belkin riders was, you know, looking ahead, and he decided to go to the right-hand side, and that was a good decision. But I've seen there, and we can see now back in the peloton, there's a lot of riders on the rear in difficulty. There's a long line of riders, the last 25-30 riders, a single file almost, and they are the ones who are starting to really suffer.
Sky doing a job of keeping things very safe. There's the man who's wearing number 1. It is, of course, Chris Froome, and yeah, he's done a fantastic job, just staying safe. He's just showing his mettle on occasion. In fact, we've finally drifted in to him. Yeah, Chris Froome has been phenomenal. No Bradley Wiggins, but they do carry the number 1, incidentally, as theirs of right as a team. But Sky today doing a great job. Geraint Thomas has been fantastic. Kinnick likewise. Let's start with just off the front with his former British Champions Union Jack on his epaulets, is that correct? Or just on the bottom of his sleeves. And away they fly, and they are flying today. 16.3 to go. This is going to be dispatched with very quickly. Thank you, incidentally, for all of you who've written in on Twitter. It's a pleasure to hear from you. It's been a wide-open day. I hope the lack of change of terrain hasn't dimmed your enthusiasm, because it has been a fascinating day. And with 16 kilometres to go, the ground does lift up tomorrow as we head to Albi. We are climbing, and then it gets alpine, albeit that we're in the Pyrenees, Artois Domain, and then Bigorre before the rest day after 9 long days. It really is a long time to have to wait, Sean, especially when every day, even the flat ones, have been as punishing as this.
Well, yes, this one, you know, it's a day where we were expecting maybe something to happen, and it's certainly going to be a punishing day. I think the riders will, you know, be tired after today. A lot of tired legs this evening, and the days to come, I think this will mark a lot of the riders, not only the riders who are suffering, who are hanging on the rear, but all the men up front here. They have really had to put in a big effort today.
$15 kilometres to go. The gentleman on the veteran's bike, I think, was wearing the colours of Raymond Poulidor.
Well, French commentators here, we did hear, oh, Raymond Poulidor. Yes, it was the colours of Mercier long time ago.
There we go, and he's been on the podium, incidentally. I think it was yesterday as a guest. Fantastic. 14.6 kilometres to go, and the pack kind of mobbing at least the road is safe, Sean, so there's a lot of options for people to move through and move through safely. Look at the side of the road where the tarmac stops and the concrete begins. Nicely smoothed off. This is good work by the local municipality to provide a fantastic surface today.
Yes, well, this is a lovely road, a lovely run in, but it doesn't continue like that. You know, there's a lot of street funnels should be negotiated in that final 10 kilometres, and a lot of cornering. A lot of corners as well, so it is going to be, you know, a nervous one for everybody. And same situation, the sprinters want to stay up there. Of course, the teams will be keeping them up there, but the general classification men want to stay close to the front as well in case there's a crash outside the 3 kilometres to go. Sorry, and you know, we can see there the way, you know, everybody's pushing on at the moment. We need to have, you know, these wide roads in the end, but I think we might have some which will reduce a little bit. But in general, I think the run is pretty okay, except for the negotiation to get round corners and some roundabouts.
Got a problem, and it's Bardet, I think, with rear wheel just pointing to it. Just keeps going as much as he can, as long as is safe. When his car gets to him, he'll step off the bike and just unclip the wheel, just to help the change process. Round the roundabouts they come. 13.3 to go. Raymond Poulidor, the eternal second on the Tour de France. Peter Sagan has been second on 2 occasions in the sprints, don't forget, at the end of day 2 and 3. Lost out to Bakelance when the charging pack just couldn't get back at the man. And then Gerrans it was that got the edge into Calvi and indeed took over that yellow jersey. Sagan second again there. He was third yesterday, and so with this opportunity, will Sagan now have a great chance of taking the sprint with perhaps a slightly diminished Mark Cavendish. We'll see just how much of his amazing strength he has retained after taking a tumble earlier on. Omega Pharma at the front, and the lime green of Cannondale just starting to show themselves on the other side of the road, and indeed this side of that road furniture. Not Belkin, slightly different shade of green, a different hue just behind the gold and blue right now of Saxo Tinkoff as they make their drive into town. Always look static when they do that. I always think there's been a crash, but it's actually just pedestrians in the roundabout. Always gives me a shock momentarily. Heading for the 12-kilometre mark, and we're coming into town, Sean. They better get this right.
Well, yes, that's what it's all about, getting it right. And, you know, we did see yesterday some of the sprinters just a little bit scrappy in the final. And if that happens, you know, in the final kilometre, we get this little mistake, the slightest little bit, it can cost you so much. You lose 2 or 3 places. We can see Stigman's there. You know, he's given hand signals. We've seen him there 2 or 3 kilometres earlier on. He is guiding the riders up front, telling them, you know, where to ride on the road, what side to keep to, and of course, you know, he's the man with experience, and you know, what a performance he put up yesterday, because I think Stigman's was, you know, really important to Cavendish. He was looking about when they came out for the last corner as Trentin was kind of finishing his pull on the front, but did not take it up immediately. He waited, he looked to his left and to his right, and there was riders coming up but still did not panic. And
oh, and another one. Cofidis largely involved, and in fact 5 of their number man in the road. Oh my goodness, it's Brajkovic. He's on the deck. Absolutely what you don't need. 11.2 to go. There's no chasing back on here, and he's going to take a packet, I'm afraid. And there's the bike, and it looks distinctly second-hand, or at least he believes it to be so, and he's staying down. 11.1 to go. There's going to be no respite. They can't here. And the time that he loses right now, and that does not look nice at all. And I think it's knee problems. They're just getting to the side of the road.
Yes,
taking a hit on the elbow as well, Sean.
Yes, and he's a rider that, you know, we've seen him in the past in the Tour de France a number of years ago. He went out. I think he was also in the crash yesterday in that final one just before the finish. But not looking good at the moment. He seemed to be sitting there. I could not really see where he was suffering, but looks like that he's not getting back on the bike immediately, making no effort at all.
Huge effort being made on the left-hand side of the road here by Omega Pharma Quick-Step for Mark Cavendish. Had his own tumble. He got back on the bike, did a superb job of relaying back on. They're all together, though, the top table, if you like, of the world of sprinting. The lime green coming through of Cannondale with the blue stripe down the back, and Brajkovic is not moving absolutely not moving, so he's taking a whole hatful of time here. Coming up around the outside, Lobato, I think it is, from Euskadel. Euskadel's got to do it all on his own. He has no other sprint help whatsoever. And the bottle's being jettisoned. 10 kilometres to go. Marker is approaching. They'll be under that banner before you know it. And there they hit it. And suddenly there's just an extra little kick of pace. Movistar also involved. Rojas, their quick man, but possibly not as quick as some of the others we have here. Brajkovic getting back on the bike. There's plenty of bandaging, and it is the knee that's the problem, despite the fact he's got a bloodied elbow as well. And the attitude of the handlebars there does not look like he's on a straight bike, but I'm sure his team are with him, and there is the car. So they come into town. There has to be no let-up because there's just too much at stake, and it's actually dangerous to knock the speed back at this point. And an ambulance is waiting, still waiting. And it looks like we've had another incident along the road, and I think he is back and underway. Brave man that he is, but he's going to take an enormous amount of time here. Janusz Brajkovic, as he goes back on. We need to get back up to the front because only 9.1 to go. There's a lot at stake, and underneath the road bridge that we were talking about as a modest pinch, there it is, nothing too serious, still 5 wide as Brajkovic gets back on. Or at least gets back on the bike, I should say. He's not going to get back onto the peloton like Mark Cavendish did. He hasn't got that kind of pace, and he's more battered and bruised, unfortunately. 8.8 kilometres to go, and they're starting to look at each other, but everyone has got something of a safe position right now. Looking further back, next to Mark Cavendish is the German champion of Andre Greipel. Kittel's also very much in the frame here, which is good news for him. Is the Japanese champion as well, Arashiro, just coming through. And we've just seen that leading group. It's about 50-60 riders. There's a big split in the peloton, and as we can see there just at this moment, the overhead shot. So the crash we've been hearing of, it's split the peloton in two. I'm actually still fighting to see Kittel as well. I'm hoping he hasn't been caught out. 8.1 to go. We're into town, and this is that big plaza that we were telling you about at the 8 to go marker. They come in and do a quarter of it and exit, but as you can see, they're beside the railway lines at the moment, and it's just a little bit more ragged. There we are, more street furniture, as Sean was saying about Saxo Tinkoff doing a safety first job. The Sky not that far behind either, so Froome and of course Contador being looked after. Meanwhile, the sprint teams are starting to form themselves. We know Brajkovic is hurt. Can we please get back up to the front, because it's crucially important that we watch this run for home. There are other stories to be told, people. 7.4 kilometres to go, and finally we get back to where matters today, albeit respect to Brajkovic, but we have this to deal with, and the pace is so high it's strung out. For goodness sake, up front, 7.2 to go, and he's got over 3 minutes down. Over one side of the road, peel off into safety, and that's good news. Maybe that was the instruction from Steegmans, who's really got the heads up here. So is Mark Cavendish. He's at the back. Kwiatkowski, and we're looking at the back at some other strugglers, I'm afraid, and the list grows of those in trouble. Tara May has not had the best of times. I don't know whether he's taken another crash. He was down earlier in this, and he looks very second-hand, Sean. Yes, he does, and we can see that he was reported in that crash, and we can see riders just getting back in here at the moment. They're just making it onto the tail end of the peloton, but still, you know, some riders having difficulty following. But I think those riders are just, you know, they've had enough. They just cannot take it anymore. 6.6 to go, and this is the remnants of that crash and the split. It's not great for them, but it may ease the pressure on those further ahead. In fact, they're at the back of that little line that camera shot was. Sky get into shape and into position. Likewise, BMC looking after Cadel Evans. Saxo Tinkoff in the gold and blue, dead centre of the road here. Just next to the red and black of BMC. They're looking after Contador. Sky looking after Froome. So safety first for those guys. They know about the crashes that we've had. And there is Argo Shimano nearly in the all-white jerseys for Marcel Kittel. So he is here, which bodes well for him. So I've got to tell you, is Christoph, who was very active yesterday, and he'll have to do it on his own. He's got an aero helmet, and he's sitting just amongst the Sky Riders, not that far from Chris Froome. 6 kilometres to go, and these guys have had an anchor effect, because these are the GC teams, Sean, not the sprint teams, that have come to the front, and the pace has knocked back ever so slightly.
Yes, well, I think there's a little bit of a just downtime at the moment. We can see there Omega Pharma Quick-Step very much to the front, but not wanting to take it up, and it's Saxo Tinkoff who are riding on the front, and it's the case for a few of the general classification men. We can see also BMC very much to the fore there.
Well, they've had enough of this Omega Pharma. They don't want to be dictated to, and they're coming through, working for Mark Cavendish, and there the golden shoulders of Greipel's team. The German champion will not be far behind. In fact, his head has just popped up, and he's very, very close to Mark Cavendish. Sagan is here as well, along with the lime green of his Cannondale team. He wears the green jersey, don't forget, so the only thing that's missing is, of course, that blue stripe from his teammates. 5.1 to go. They're all looking at each other here. Nobody wants to take it up. Underneath the 5 to go banner, and it's the Swiss champion Shah that picks it up for BMC. The rest of them in their black and red, picking their way through. Arga Shimano and Degenkolb and Kittel, I believe, are both there, which is very good news for them. Orica Green Edge, they've done a lot of work today. Where's Matt Goss, we're asking, and where is indeed Brett Lancaster? We'll see. Still a long shot, and still 4.5 kilometres to go, and still nobody wants to pick it up, Sean. The pace is held up for now, and a little bit of a sit-up just to see who's where.
Yes, well, I think you know, they're all afraid to take it up too early. We can see just under 4.5 kilometres. They want to stay very much at the front, but not really take it up at full bore. And you know, it is a long ways out, for just over 4 kilometres. You try and play the waiting game, and if there's a team, as we see the general classification teams, they're keeping up a good pace, and you know, if they are doing that, well, then you leave them at it, and leave them take the front for as long as possible. Now we can see Argos Shimano are the ones that are dictating pace.
They are, and in fact the white jersey of Kwiatkowski is sort of shaking his head there as they've interrupted their own little lead out. Just sprung off the front almost by accident. One of the Lotto Belisol boys looks back, tries to find Andre Greipel. So it's a little bit of a mishmash between those three teams at the moment. Nobody really willing, or perhaps even capable after a difficult day like today, to take it on. I've got to say the freshest of all of them look like Cannondale at the moment. They're really holding station. They've not done a great deal of work today, and we'll see whether it is in fact Sagan's day today because of all the bumps and bruises that everybody else has had on a particularly punishing day. Arga Shimano have got some belief, and here come Omega Pharma right now, breathing heavily, deeply, and you can see from the flags they're almost billowing like sailboats at the moment in the breeze, but well protected they are from that, with 3.4 kilometres to go. Still no injection, Sean.
Well, no major injection, but it's going at a fast rate here. It's certainly going at plus 50 kilometres per hour. You know, it's not stretched out major, but again, it's difficult to, you know, put them all in one line. I think at the moment Argos Shimano are giving it close to their 100% as we come to the just outside 3 kilometres to go. It'll be interesting to see now how long Omega Pharma will hold off here, and we can see they're just hovering there. Lotto Belisol also here, so you know, the teams of the big sprinters are very much to the fore.
They certainly are. There's the yellow jersey as well. Wants to finish amongst the leaders to hold on to it. Simon Gerrans, they've done a superb job. Omega Orica Green Edge. At the front, it's Argos Shimano. At the very back of this line is Degenkolb, but he's acting as a wingman, as protection for Marcel Kittel, who took the first stage here, albeit with a crash. Now, they don't want any of that to happen. 2.4 kilometres to go, and they're coming into town. The Flamme Rouge will go under a road bridge, and then all hell will break loose. I don't think anyone's going to really set their stall out until that point, Sean.
Well, I think it's difficult because Argos Shimano are setting, you know, quite a strong pace here, and there is sections here as well where it's going up a little bit, because the final kilometres it does creep up the slight little bit, and that's going to hurt when you're going at this pace.
Incidentally, the final kilometre has an incline to it, so it's a run uphill, if you like. It's quite benign, but it will be a false flat as they kick up, and suddenly they decide that now's the time to inject a little bit of pace, and it is Lotto Belisol that feel fresh. They've looked at everybody else. Man peels off for the all-white of Argus Shimano, but the golden shoulders of Lotto Belisol by the barriers, and they're working for Andre Greipel. He does not want to get detached. It's a free ride as far as Matt Goss is concerned. He's here, so is Brett Lancaster, and just a little bit behind them, you will also catch out that we're just looking and seeing that there it is. Christoph is also there on his Jack Jones. He has to be. He's got nobody else. He's on his lonesome. Well, they're all still looking at each other, and so is the quick man from Euskadi here, Lobato. Well, it's out front, and I've got to tell you that the green jersey of Sagan is now dispatched with his teammates, and he's decided that he's got the belief, and he's got Greipel just in front of him. There he is. Greipel is in P4 at the moment. Sagan's just behind him, and here comes Steegmans lighting it up, but unfortunately it's Christoph that he's working for at the moment. The big man coming to the fore, and there goes Kittel racing for the line, but it's Greipel still with a teammate at the front. Kittel trying to get into position with the help of Degenkolb, who flips his elbow and says, "You go for it, my friend." And Mark Cavendish has dug ever so deep with his black helmet here, comes by the green jersey of Sagan there, and it's up by the barriers. It is going to be Greipel, is it? Here comes Cav versus Greipel. Unbelievable. Greipel takes it. Sagan second, Kittel in third, and Mark Cavendish in fourth place after a supreme effort today. That was great salvage by Mark Cavendish, but you've got to hand it to Greipel.
Yes, you've got to hand to Greipel and to Lotto Belisol. A magnificent final there. We could see Adam Hansen, preparing outside the kilometre, then Seabout taking it up, and then Roland's, doing the final bit, and Greipel just getting the perfect lead out. Cavendish was, a little bit further off. We could see Steegmans, he wasn't able to take up the sprint, and just beckoned to Cavendish. He asked, "I can't do any more," and Cavendish back in about 5 or 6 position, but Greipel had the advantage. He got the jump on them, and we can see Cavendish, he had to come from a long ways, and paid in the final metres.
He did pay. He'd come back an awful long ways after a crash, of course. Greipel taking it ahead of Sagan, Kittel, Cavendish. Wow. And we're hearing that the new yellow jersey may well be on the back of Impey, because he's finished 9 places further ahead than his teammate Simon Gerrans. Well, we'll get confirmation of that for you. Impey motivated, of course, to take over the yellow, and why not share the love? Greipel, Sagan, Kittel, Cavendish. Lobato did well on his own, did he not, to get up there. Christoph, likewise, got no help. Rojas van Poppel, amazing. Well. There, your finish today. Sean Kelly's going to head off and try and chat with the great and the good, and the not feeling so good, I'll be bound. Thanks to him, and indeed for your company today on what has been a remarkable day of cycling, as ever, in this beautiful city of Montpellier. This was the moment. Well, they set the stall out early. They rode the curves of the road. Sagan got close, but again, runner-up spot. He doesn't like it, but nonetheless, he's racking up the points. Greipel supreme today, the German champion. Love that. Well, from the overhead shot here, at this point, I think if Mark Cavendish had been in possession of his full reserves and not had that crash, this wouldn't have been a problem at all. But crash he had to expend a lot of energy getting back. Just drifting over towards Kittel there, but Kittel was already set in position, I think, for that third place, so unhampered in terms of results. Greipel takes it ahead of Sagan. Kittel in third place with Mark Cavendish fourth today. Well, it means that Andre Greipel, courtesy of the win, and indeed the points that have been racked up because of that, I believe, takes over the points classification and will be in green tomorrow. So it did have a big cost, did it not? They factor in on flat stages extra points for the sprinters, fewer in the mountains, so that it's kept for the quick men, essentially, so protected. But Andre Greipel's win today I think he's got 45 points, incidentally. Enough for him to take a big move up. We'll see. Confirmation of it in a moment. We do have a new yellow jersey. Impey, the first South African. How lovely. Bosenhagen in second place, ahead of Gerrits. Well, you take your chances on a day such as today, and indeed, you ride your luck as well. Unfortunately, it looks like it might well just run out for Janis Brajkovic. Tough day. He wasn't alone. Thanks for your company. What a day of cycling. The Tour de France, the 100th running of the great event, has not disappointed on any day.